Chapter 31:22. With a loud roar, a figure appeared in the sky and transformed into a big hand. He wanted to grab the sky-shaking turtle emperor and rescue him. However, he was still too late. Originally, when the sky-shaking turtle emperor had cultivated to such a level, his spirit had long been integrated with his physical body and was inseparable. That was why he could recover with just one cell. However, his spirit had already been extracted by Yi Shiwen. After losing his spirit, his physical body also lost its luster. The spirit of the sky-shaking turtle emperor was caught in Yi Shiwen's hand, constantly struggling. Even if only his spirit was left, the sky-shaking turtle emperor was still extremely powerful. Ordinary quasi-emperors would be killed in one blow, and even peak quasi-emperors couldn't escape. However, at this time, in Yi Shiwen's hands, he was like a little chick. He had no power to fight back and couldn't do anything at all. The spirit of the sky-shaking turtle emperor constantly exuded a powerful aura, but it couldn't even break through Yi Shiwen's palm. Release his spirit. The figure emerged, but it was none other than Origin, returning Tyrant King. Origin, returning Tyrant King, save me, the sky-shaking turtle emperor hurriedly said. His eyes finally had a glimmer of hope amidst the despair. Just when he thought that he was going to die, the Origin, returning overlord appeared. No matter how big the grudges between them were in the past, Origin, returning Tyrant King was indeed the only hope to save him at this time. Origin, returning Tyrant King looked at the sky-shaking turtle emperor with some disgust, but he was secretly happy. Now that the sky-shaking turtle emperor had been seriously injured to this extent, the gap between them would only widen in the future. It was impossible for the sky-shaking turtle emperor to cause any trouble. Even so, he couldn't let the sky-shaking turtle emperor die in Yi Shiwen's hands. Otherwise, the troubles in the future would be endless. You are Origin, returning Tyrant King? Yi Shiwen saw that the other party's aura was extremely powerful. He was already at the peak of the 6th realm. He knew that there were a total of 4 peak 6th realm experts present. He had already seen Gung, Gene Tiger Emperor, and Li Emperor, and it was impossible for the Eternal Divine Emperor to save the sky-shaking turtle emperor, who was a foreign expert. This was politically incorrect. Even if the Heavenly Tao sect and the Fortune God dynasty didn't get along well, no one dared to take the wrong side when it came to matters of the outer domain. No one knew what was going on in private, but in public, even the Eternal Saint Emperor couldn't afford to offend the public. In that case, there was only one possibility left, and that was He Gemingui Yuan. That's right. The primordial returning tyrant sovereign's eyes were cold as they shone with a dangerous glint. He didn't launch an attack immediately. It had only been a short time since he had decided to attack, but Yi Shiwen had already severely injured the sky-shaking turtle emperor. Such a character wasn't easy to deal with. Let him go, otherwise, even if you escape to the Fortune God dynasty, don't even think of escaping. He Gemingui Yuan said coldly. Could it be that you foreign creatures want to kill your way into the Fortune Divine dynasty? A disdainful smile appeared on Yi Shiwen's face. It was fine if these words were meant to scare others, but if they wanted to scare him, they were worlds apart. At the same time, many emperors of the Fortune God dynasty couldn't help but sneer. In the outer domain, the foreign creatures were naturally tyrannical. Similarly, the Fortune God dynasty was the base camp of these emperors. If those foreign creatures dared to kill their way in, they would undoubtedly be courting death. This was just like how the emperors of the Fortune God dynasty didn't dare to truly enter the outer domain. Based on Yi Shiwen's strength, only a tycoon-level invincible existence could pose a threat to him. And if that kind of expert appeared, it would definitely alarm the invincible experts of the Fortune God dynasty. Therefore, it was impossible for Yi Shiwen to threaten him. Martial Emperor, do you still want to leave today? He Gemingui Yuan said indifferently. If I want to leave, who can stop me? Yi Shiwen said indifferently. His words were filled with endless confidence. Martial Emperor, I want you to return the thing you took from me last time with interest. An even colder voice came from behind Yi Shiwen. A majestic figure emerged. The golden heptachi on his body seemed to be able to cut the world into pieces. Who else could this person be but Tiger Emperor Gungjin? The two of them, one in front and one behind, formed a pincer attack on Yishiwen. This martial emperor is in big trouble now. Whether it is Tiger Emperor Gungjin or Hejimen Gui Yuan, they're the most terrifying and powerful existences. He has offended both of them at the same time. If it was just one of them, he might still be able to escape. But if both of them join forces, I'm afraid he won't even have the chance to escape. This person is also powerful. Others don't even have the chance to offend two great experts at the same time. Although they admired Yi Shiwen's ability to cause trouble under the siege of two great experts, no one would be optimistic about Yi Shiwen's chances. Emperor Li frowned slightly. He just looked at this scene coldly. It seemed that he was ready to make a move. Whether it was Tiger Emperor Gungjin or Hejimen Gui Yuan, they were both on his kill list. No matter which one of them was killed, it would be a great contribution to him. He might even get a reward from the higher-ups. At that time, it would be possible for him to enter the seventh realm. At his current level of cultivation, it was extremely difficult to rely on his own strength to break through to the seventh realm and become an influential little tycoon. For an Emperor Lord, there were also natural treasures or some special methods that could promote one's breakthrough, but these were in the hands of the Fortune Divine Dynasty's higher echelons. If one didn't make great contributions to the dynasty, it would be very difficult to obtain them. This was the fundamental reason why he chased after Tiger Emperor Gungjin. It was not only because the Fortune God dynasty and the outer domain were old enemies, but also related to the possibility of him advancing further in the future. When it came to the Great Tao, there was no possibility of compromise. So the two of you have already joined forces. Yi Shiwen faced the situation where the two of them were about to attack him from the front and the back. He was not afraid at all. Yes, today, don't even think of escaping. Tiger Emperor Gungjin said coldly. His eyes were cold and ruthless. He hated Yi Shiwen to the core. If it weren't for Yi Shiwen, he would have already obtained the body of the Time Beast Emperor. The time fragment contained within was very important to him. If he could obtain it, he would definitely be able to enter the seventh realm. For an emperor, this was also a watershed. Whether one was strong or not depended on this. How could this not make him hate Yi Shiwen? Even Emperor Li, who had chased him before, was not as terrifying as Yi Shiwen in his heart. He could only be ranked second. Escape? Do I need to escape? Yi Shiwen sneered. Do you think I will be the same as last time? Oomph. Do you think you have the slightest chance of winning against the two of us? As soon as the Tiger Emperor Gungjin's voice fell, he moved. In an instant, endless golden Gung Chi danced between heaven and earth. His entire body looked golden and dazzling. The endless golden Gung Chi turned into a golden Gung robe, draping over his body. He was like an incomparably powerful ruler. Boom! He suddenly stomped his foot. In an instant, the sky collapsed and the earth caved in. There were brilliant lights and vibrant colors everywhere, and a terrifying wave swept out. Many emperors felt the sky change color. It was as if the surrounding spiritual energy and laws were suddenly sucked out and rushed towards the Tiger Emperor Gungjin. The peak of the sixth realm. This is the true strength of the peak of the sixth realm. Many people immediately swallowed a mouthful of saliva. It was different from the ordinary sixth realm. The peak of the sixth realm could already exert the power of this realm to a shocking level. It was not something that ordinary people could deal with. Yi Shiwen's expression did not change. The Tiger Emperor Gungjin in front of him was indeed terrifying. The golden Gungjin that he had faced previously was not even half of his true strength. After being seriously injured, the power that he could mobilize was also extremely limited. If it was before, he might not be a match for the Tiger Emperor Gungjin. However, things were different now. Yi Shiwen stretched out his arms and directly turned them into two terrifying punches. He did not devour the spiritual energy between heaven and earth. Instead, he only used his own power and evolved it to the extreme. Boom! In front of Yi Shiwen, where his fists were pointing, the Tiger Emperor Gungjin appeared in front of him as if it had long been coordinated. In other words, All of this had been calculated by Yi Shiwen. Bang! Yi Shiwen's fist directly collided with the Tiger Emperor Gongjin. In an instant, a loud sound of metal colliding splashed out and turned into a terrifying sound wave that swept in all directions. Both sides were like two huge planets that had fiercely collided with each other. That terrifying collision was accompanied by the astonishing collision of the divine kingdoms of both sides, setting off monstrous waves. Both sides' bodies were tyrannical to the extreme. Yi Shiwen's gilded tyrant form was specialized in dealing with all kinds of tyrannical physiques. The Tiger Emperor Gongjin's body was completely composed of Gongjin, one of the hardest metals in the world. Both sides' bodies were tyrannical to the extreme. At this time, both sides collided with each other. There was not the slightest bit of fancy tricks. The Tiger Emperor Gongjin only felt a terrifying power coming from the opposite side. It directly shook his body. This kind of terrifying power was not inferior to his. How was this possible? How many years have passed? He was suddenly shocked. He vaguely remembered that Yi Shiwen had just made a breakthrough. At that time, even if he was in a seriously injured state, he could still fight to a draw with him. This was also the fundamental reason why he was so confident in the beginning. In his opinion, now that his injuries had recovered, it was impossible for Yi Shiwen to be a match for him. Everything would be a piece of cake. However, reality gave him a ruthless slap in the face. Yi Shiwen was far from being weak. While he was still in shock, Yi Shiwen's backhand punched again. Chapter 31:23. Yi Shiwen's movements were too fast. In comparison, the gunmetal Tiger Emperor was not prepared at all. He did not even think that Yi Shiwen would be able to fight him to a draw. In his opinion, Yi Shiwen shouldn't even be able to withstand his attack. However, things were completely beyond his expectations. Not only did Yi Shiwen easily block his attack, he even had the strength to counterattack. This completely subverted his worldview. Yi Shiwen's movements were too fast. His fist directly pierced through the sky. The laws of heaven and earth turned into endless chains, twining around his arm and increasing the power of his fist. Bang! The gunmetal Tiger Emperor only had enough time to raise his hand to resist. His body was invincible, and his terrifying strength could make people tremble in fear. However, he was unexpectedly sent flying after being bombarded by Yi Shiwen's fist. Everyone didn't get a chance to react. All of this had happened too fast. Yi Shiwen had already pounced on the gunmetal Tiger Emperor in an instant. He had launched another terrifying and outstanding attack. All kinds of blazing divine chains were fluttering around his body. They had transformed into a terrifying attack and had shot towards the gunmetal Tiger Emperor. It seemed as if they wanted to pierce through his body. Bang! 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 After Yi Shiwen had seized the initiative, the gunmetal Tiger Emperor soon realized the consequences of this. Yi Shiwen's combat experience could be said to be exceptionally rich. He didn't reveal even the slightest flaw. Every attack of his was capable of shattering the vault of heaven. Not only was every attack able to injure the Tiger Emperor, but it was also able to expand his advantage. It had only been a few breaths, and he had been completely suppressed by Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen's storm-like attacks made him unable to lift his head. He could only passively defend. He could not even counterattack. Many tyrannical sovereign emperors couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. They swallowed a mouthful of saliva. It seemed as if they had seen a ghost. Yi Shiwen hadn't allowed the 7th Metal Tiger King to gain the upper hand during this period of time. In fact, the 7th Metal Tiger King hadn't even had the opportunity to reverse the situation. If they were in his shoes, they would have died a long time ago. Even if they were at the 6th level, they would have died as well. It was only because the gunmetal Tiger King had an unparalleled physical body that made him more resilient. Otherwise, who knew how miserable he would have been? Yi Shiwen had thoroughly suppressed the gunmetal Tiger Emperor. This was even more shocking than when he had killed the sky-shaking Turtle Emperor. Although they were both level 6, how could an ordinary level 6 sky-shaking Turtle Emperor compare to a level 6 pinnacle gunmetal Tiger Emperor? Yi Shiwen's strength was too amazing. Even Emperor Li's eyes flashed with a trace of splendor. When Yishuan had said that he wanted to form an alliance with him, he hadn't taken it seriously. After all, not everyone was qualified to form an alliance with him. However, Yishuan had killed the Shaking Sky Turtle Emperor and suppressed the Gung Metal Tiger Emperor to prove that he was indeed qualified. Countless information about Yishuan flashed through his mind. However, it was obvious that these information were all wrong. They didn't match Yishuan's current amazing performance. After returning, he would definitely update these information. After this battle, no matter what, Yishuan's name would shake the world. Previously, he had hoped to recruit Yishuan as his subordinate. But now, it seemed that it was absolutely impossible. Even if Yishuan was a relatively equal subordinate, it would be an insult to an expert of this level. He was very clear about the consequences of insulting an expert. If someone dared to insult him, then he would definitely make that person regret being born into this world. On the other side, the Ghost Emperor and Tyrant Emperor's eyes were also filled with shock. No matter what information he had obtained, there was no mention of Yishuan being so terrifying. Therefore, he didn't make any moves. He was stunned for such a long time. However, he could see that the Gung Metal Tiger Emperor had completely fallen into a disadvantageous position. Although his relationship with the Gung Metal Tiger Emperor wasn't good, it didn't prevent them from being allies. Without the Gung Metal Tiger Emperor's restraint, he would fall into the encirclement of the three top experts of the Fortune God Dynasty. This was absolutely not what he wanted to see. On the point of killing Yishuan, the Eternal Divine Emperor indeed had the same standpoint as them. In fact, it could even be said that they had a tacit understanding. However, on other issues, they were completely hostile. As long as there was a chance, he believed that the Eternal Divine Emperor would absolutely not let him go. On the contrary, if there was a chance, he wouldn't mind taking the Eternal Divine Emperor's head. In this kind of situation, the existence of the Gung Metal Tiger Emperor was even more important. Thinking of this, he didn't hesitate at all. He moved on the spot and was about to rush out and attack the Gung Metal Tiger Emperor from both sides. However, in just a moment, a figure blocked in front of him. With a somewhat sinister smile on his face, he said, "At this time, I think it's better that you don't go in and disturb the two of them." Emperor Li. Jiminge Yuan's face became dignified because he was very clear that the person in front of him was not a small fry. He was a big shot of the Ministry of Justice of the Fortune Divine Dynasty. It was unknown how many Emperor-level creatures from the foreign domains had been killed by him. Compared to him, Yishuan's reputation was simply insignificant. There was no comparison at all. Jiminge Yuan, I think it's better that you don't act rashly. You can still live a little longer. Otherwise, I can't guarantee that you will live until tomorrow. Emperor Li smiled coldly. His words were filled with boundless confidence. There was nothing in the world that he was afraid of. He only had one goal, and that was to enter the seventh realm and become a small big shot. Anyone who obstructed his goal must die. In a sense, these people's goals were the same. However, they would become the biggest obstacles for each other to enter the seventh realm. In the end, Jiminge Yuan didn't act rashly. After all, it was not a good idea to directly clash with Emperor Li at this time. In the distance, a group of people had just arrived at this battlefield. However, everyone's attention was on the battlefield. No one noticed the arrival of this group of people. Eternal Sage Emperor, should we intervene? This group of people was Eternal Sage Emperor's group. This group of people had just received the news of Yishuan's appearance. They had already appeared here. Someone immediately asked. The Heavenly Taoism had wanted to kill Yishuan for a long time. For this reason, even the big shots of the sixth realm were sent to lead the hunt. It had been a long time since anyone dared to provoke the Heavenly Taoism sect like this. No need. Just watch. We don't have to do it ourselves. When the time comes, we will let the two of them fight until both sides are injured. Wouldn't it be better for us to intervene? Eternal Sage Emperor was not anxious at all. His plan was to let both sides suffer. It would be best if Emperor Li and Jiminge Yuan also participated. At that time, they would really be the fishermen who reaped the benefits. It could even be said that the original He Jimin Gue Yuan and Tiger Emperor Gungjin also had the same idea. They wanted Eternal Sage Emperor to take the lead in fighting Yi Shiwen. At that time, they could reap the benefits. Unfortunately, because of the sky-shaking Turtle Emperor's attack, their plan fell short of success. Especially He Jimin Gue Yuan, it was impossible for him to watch the sky-shaking Turtle Emperor die tragically. Otherwise, even if he could return, he would not have a good ending in the end. The biggest mistake was that they had underestimated Yi Shiwen's strength. They thought that they could easily defeat or even kill Yi Shiwen. However, Yi Shiwen would erupt with such amazing combat power and terrifying strength. This was the fundamental reason why they had to take the lead in the end. In the battlefield, Yi Shiwen's advantage was getting bigger and bigger. He did not have to worry about letting go of opportunities because of his experience in battles. He was just constantly increasing his advantage. If the Tiger Emperor Gung Jin's physical body was not terrifyingly strong, he would have been seriously injured by Yi Shiwen. Even so, the Tiger Emperor Gung Jin was in a very difficult situation. He couldn't organize any of his defenses. All his defenses would be broken by Yi Shiwen's attack the moment they were organized. The Dao that he was good at didn't have any advantage in front of Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen was good at everything that he was good at. In fact, Yi Shiwen was even stronger than him. In fact, Yi Shiwen was also good at things that he wasn't good at. Yi Shiwen's 3,000 martial Dao seemed unrealistic at first. The 3,000 martial Dao contained too many things. Under normal circumstances, one would be able to become an emperor if they were proficient in one of the 3,000 martial Dao. Not to mention, they would be able to cultivate the 3,000 martial Dao to an extremely profound realm. This made Yi Shiwen seem as if he had no weaknesses. No matter what kind of strong enemy he encountered, he could restrain, suppress, and even kill them. Bang! There was a huge roar, and the overturning the sky seal directly fell down and smashed on the Tiger Emperor Gung Jin's head. The Tiger Emperor Gung Jin staggered on the spot. The Tiger Emperor Gung Jin's head was smashed, and his body staggered forward. Finally, he couldn't hold on any longer and fell heavily on the ground. The entire ground was smashed, and a huge crack appeared. Roar! The Tiger Emperor Gung Jin didn't care about his dignity since he had been forced into such a situation. He immediately transformed into his terrifying body. It was a terrifying tiger that stood between the heaven and the earth. This tiger's entire body was golden in color. His body was covered with metallic vein patterns. Each vein pattern was engraved with a kind of Tao law. It possessed a dreadful power that ordinary people couldn't even imagine. It could be said that his body was the perfect embodiment of the Tao. He was the most terrifying existence in this world. Bang! The overturning heaven strike smashed onto his body. Suddenly, a few cracks appeared on his golden body. He had resisted Yi Shiwen's attack. He had forcibly suppressed his injuries and had finally seized back the initiative of the battle. The situation had suddenly changed. Chapter 31-24. The Gung Metal Tiger Emperor forcefully took one of Yi Shiwen's moves. Only then did he manage to reverse the situation. He was also a battle-hardened man. He naturally knew that if he continued to be beaten, a small injury would turn into a big one. At that time, he would truly die without a burial place. The Gung Metal Tiger Emperor bit off the bloodstain and transformed back into his human form. He then looked at Yi Shiwen indifferently. He wouldn't treat Yi Shiwen as an ordinary person this time. After all, even a little mistake could lead to a real defeat in a battle of this level. It could be said that a slight mistake could lead to a huge difference. A battle between experts only took a moment. Yi Shiwen's face revealed a slight look of disappointment as he failed to kill the Gung Metal Tiger Emperor in one fell swoop. However, this disappointment only lasted for a moment. This was because he knew that it was very difficult to kill someone like the Gung Metal Tiger Emperor. The current situation was too chaotic. It was not impossible to kill him in one fell swoop, but it would be difficult to do so in a short period of time. However, Yi Shiwen was not worried. The Gung Metal Tiger Emperor's body was circulating the Gung Metal Divine Power. He was constantly healing himself. A complex look flashed in his eyes. Everyone could not help but sigh in relief. The series of battles just now had dazzled everyone. They did not even dare to blink their eyes. They might have missed the most important battle in a short period of time. They were highly focused. Now, they finally had a chance to breathe. The entire battlefield was filled with all kinds of breathing sounds. These were all extremely terrifying experts. Their breaths were like monstrous waves that were surging endlessly. Yishuin slightly sneered. After a short period of calm, the battle broke out again. It was Tiger Emperor Gungjin who had made his move. He was no longer as carefree and at ease as he had been a moment ago. This was because he had already seen that Hegemon Emperor Gui Yuan had been blocked by Emperor Li. Therefore, he had no one to rely on. He could only rely on himself. However, the person in front of him was definitely not someone easy to deal with. In an instant, countless gung metal chi severed the space and time. Everyone could clearly see the rupture of time. The fragments of time exploded at his fingertips. The gung metal Tiger Emperor was already going all out at this time. Golden gung chi burst out of him one after another and transformed into a blazing waterfall. It seemed as if the Milky Way had fallen from the ninth heaven and was about to strike Yi Shiwen to death. The power of each gung metal chi was enormous to the extreme. It could even easily injure an ordinary emperor. Obviously, he didn't want to delay for too long. He wanted to deal with Yi Shiwen in the shortest time possible. One must know that the Pan-Heavenly Palace would soon appear according to his calculations. So, he didn't want to delay the battle until then. Everyone saw that, of course, including Yi Shiwen. Everyone looked at so many golden hepta chi flying in the air. How could Yi Shiwen block these attacks so easily? Yi Shiwen sneered. It's no use. You, Gung Ji Metal King, you. Yi Shiwen was not afraid at all. Astride, not only did not dodge, on the contrary, but also directly rushed up, condensed into a sword, directly toward the golden hepta chi that was rushing over. Clang! A huge explosion sound was heard, as if two huge metals had collided together. Although the golden gung chi was not as hard as the golden tiger emperor itself, but it was definitely one of the hardest divine objects. However, under the attack of Yi Shiwen's finger sword, it loudly exploded. It was as if it was unable to withstand this terrifying force and instantly exploded. It was no longer able to form a real attack. Bang! 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 Again and again, Yi Shiwen's figure was like a flying immortal, his feet stepping out of the mysterious steps, and every time these golden hepta chi were about to attack his body, it was blown up by his finger. Yi Shiwen dispersed the golden gung chi, while chasing in the direction of the Tiger Emperor. All the sovereign emperors on the battlefield remained silent. After a long time, someone finally spoke. A battle at the peak of the sixth realm. Both the Golden Tiger Emperor and Yi Shiwen have touched that level. I'm afraid the seventh realm is just around the corner. It's terrifying. The Golden Hepta origin of the Golden Hepta Tiger Emperor is too pure. It is so pure that it is not afraid of any existence. No matter what kind of existence the other party is, it can be completely annihilated. If it were us, I'm afraid we would suffer a great loss and even die in his hands. Yi Shiwen's means are also heaven-defying. Just looking at his physical cultivation, I'm afraid he is not inferior to the Golden Tiger Emperor. He might even be stronger. He is too strong. This was the evaluation of the Gung Metal Tiger Emperor and Yi Shiwen by many sovereign emperors. One could well imagine how amazing Yi Shiwen and the Gung Metal Tiger Emperor were in their eyes. In fact, they had already surpassed the limits of their imagination. In the distance, the Eternal Sage Emperor and the others' faces were also very ugly. They did not expect Yi Shiwen to be this strong. At this moment, they only had one feeling in their hearts. Those guys who collected information grew up eating dog, sh*t. They could even make such an obvious mistake. Especially the sovereign emperors behind the Eternal Sage Emperor. Their faces were even uglier. If they did not know this and rushed forward rashly, they would be beaten up in minutes, and then taught a lesson by Yi Shiwen. It was incomparably terrifying just thinking about it. This Yi Shiwen must die. The eternal sage emperor's expression was even more dignified. He is already so difficult to deal with now. If he's allowed to grow, it will be terrible. I'm afraid even we can't keep him in check by then. Yi Shiwen's powerful strength not only did not make him give up, but on the contrary, it made the killing intent in his heart heavier. Meanwhile, Yi Shiwen had already arrived in front of the Gung Metal Tiger Emperor, and a fierce battle was about to unfold. The Golden Tiger Emperor was not unprepared. In an instant, a long river formed by the Golden Gung Chi was produced. At first, it flowed slowly, but then it began to flow rapidly. In an instant, it collapsed and roared, blasting towards Yi Shiwen. A little bit of golden hepta chi was enough to split the heavens and the earth, not to mention such a terrifying golden hepta river. Not only did it contain this most solid divine object of heaven and earth, but there were also endless laws condensed in it. In an instant, it covered the sky and the earth, and its attack power reached the strongest. Yi Shiwen died. Yi Shiwen did not speak. His big hand turned towards the void, and suddenly, the Avicii sword appeared in his hand. The Avicii sword directly slashed towards the long river of golden Gung Chi. The sword Chi turned into a huge Avicii hell in the sky, flying high in the sky, suppressing the world. Boom! The long river of golden Gung Chi directly crashed into the Avicii hell. The Golden Tiger Emperor's expression was dignified. Golden rays of light flickered all over his body. His whole body seemed to be cast from gold. He pinched a seal in his hand, and that terrifying long river of golden Gung Chi was his arm. It was his weapon, and it crashed toward the Avicii hell. He wanted to use the long river of golden Gung Chi to destroy the Avicii hell. He wanted to use the long river of golden Gung Chi to pierce through the world and kill his way to victory. These methods had already involved his origin. He was already fighting with his life on the line. Endless collisions unfolded in the sky. The golden Gung Chi and the sword Chi of the Avicii sword devoured each other. The two peerless powerhouses collided in the sky. Golden Tiger Emperor, you think you can go against me? Yi Shiwen shouted. He directly let go of the Avicii sword and let the Golden Tiger Emperor crush him. Yi Shiwen took a big stride forward and rushed in a battlefield where both sides were colliding. These terrifying shockwaves that could destroy heaven and earth, and who knew how many galaxies have been destroyed, all rushed towards his body. However, they couldn't break his defense. Yi Shiwen's body emitted the power of time. It was like a divine kingdom of time, and it protected him. There was nothing in this world that could exist forever. Only time could exist forever. No matter what kind of attack it was, it could not destroy this terrifying power of time. Yi Shiwen spread his hands. It seemed as if a Kuan Peng had spread its wings. He tore these shockwaves apart, and once again rushed towards the Golden Tiger Emperor. Take my fist! Yi Shiwen's fist blasted out. It was the 6 paths of reincarnation fist. The power of the world revolved violently, and then condensed into the fist momentum. Then, it bombarded the body of the Golden Tiger Emperor. Roar! The Golden Tiger Emperor roared. He transformed into his original body and opened his big mouth. It seemed as if he wanted to swallow Yi Shiwen's fist momentum into his stomach. Yi Shiwen's fist momentum seemed to have entered a whole new world. This was not a reckless move. It was a kind of magical power. It could swallow everything into its stomach and then thoroughly refine it. It was an innate magical power that was born when he transformed into his tiger form. It was extremely terrifying. It could almost be said that there was nothing in the world that it could not swallow. Yi Shiwen, come again. The Golden Tiger Emperor shouted at Yi Shiwen. Do you think it is so easy to swallow my things? Yi Shiwen roared and pinched a seal. Suddenly, a terrifying power seemed to be born in the Gung Metal Tiger Emperor's stomach. It grew bigger and bigger until the Gung Metal Tiger Emperor's stomach couldn't hold it anymore. Boom! A loud explosion sounded, and the entire Golden Tiger Emperor exploded. It seemed as if it had turned into a bloody mist. The fist intention of Yi Shiwen's 6 paths of reincarnation fist had exploded in his stomach. Even the Golden Tiger Emperor could not resist it. Even the golden body could not stop the explosion from inside. Good opportunity. Yishuan's eyes lit up. He stepped forward and pinched the overturning sky seal in his hand. It transformed into an ancient sacred mountain and directly smashed down. I will kill you in one blow. And at this time, a terrifying attack pierced through the sky and went straight towards Yishuan's face. Another terrifying existence finally couldn't help but attack. Chapter 31:25. Just as Yishuan was about to kill the Gung Metal Tiger Emperor with a single strike, another terrifying existence finally made a move. A huge hand pierced through the sky and flew directly towards Yishuan. This huge hand carried a terrifying power as it slammed down from the sky. It clearly had an imposing aura that wanted to kill Yishuan on the spot. Obviously, he had been waiting for this opportunity for a long time. His attack at this time could be said to be just right. Ordinary people simply couldn't dodge this attack and could only take it head-on. Yishuan only snorted coldly. He didn't make any unnecessary movements. He just withdrew his attack and blasted out a backhand punch. Boom! In an instant, the heaven and earth shook violently. The fist and the palm collided in the void on the spot. That terrifying power almost broke the heaven and earth. It was as if a single strike had broken the pillars of the heaven and earth. All kinds of primal chaos divine lights wantonly, and the Emperor's law swept out at an astonishing speed. Yishuan directly blocked this attack. Although this attack wasn't able to seriously injure him, Yishuan wasn't able to kill the Gung Metal Tiger Emperor completely because of this. The Gung Metal Tiger Emperor had escaped. The Gung Metal Tiger Emperor couldn't help but gasp for breath. The terrifying shock wave formed by the collision between Yishuan and that huge hand had directly hit his body. The astral wind was biting cold, but he only felt a chill down his spine. He had escaped this disaster. If no one had made a move just now, perhaps he would have died at Yishuan's hands. There was a bit of surprise in his eyes. He really didn't expect Yishuan to have such strength. Even he had almost fallen into Yishuan's trap. Yishuan put his hands behind his back. His eyes burst out with a terrifying light. He said coldly, "You still don't want to come out? Do you want me to invite you?" Everyone's eyes followed Yishuan's words and quickly looked into the distance. The fight between these two people had already shocked everyone. It was definitely a collision between the top experts. And now, someone had actually dared to intervene in their fight. A cold snort was heard. Then, a figure quickly swept over. When everyone saw the appearance of this person, they suddenly felt that it was both within their expectations and unexpected. It was the Eternal Saint Emperor. Many people felt as if their brains had short-circuited. Although they had guessed that the Eternal Divine Emperor wouldn't let Yishuan off, they hadn't expected that he would choose to attack at this time. Everyone knew that with the enmity between the Fortune God dynasty and the foreign domains, only death awaited them if they joined hands. This was a matter of great righteousness, so no one dared to violate the taboo. It really is you. After watching for so long, you finally can't help but make a move? Yishuan sneered. He wasn't surprised at all. The existence of the eternal sage sovereign was already within his expectations. However, he hadn't expected the eternal divine king to make a move at this time. You actually colluded with creatures from the outer realm. Even if you go out today, you won't be able to escape death. What could it be that you want to defect to the outer realm like him? Yishuan sneered and said. On the other side, Emperor Li's expression was a little complicated, a little playful, and a little hateful. Eternal Divine King, I think you should know what kind of crime it is to collude with creatures from the outer realm, Emperor Li said coldly. His eyes were shining, and then he felt a headache, because he realized that this might be a meritorious deed. However, if Tiger Emperor Gung Jin and Heavenly Emperor Gui Yuan were counted, then the problem would be troublesome. Even his original plan to kill and capture Tiger Emperor Gung Jin might be ruined. His heart was filled with hatred. Colluding with creatures from the outer realm? When did you see me colluding with creatures from the outer realm? Eternal Divine King said unyieldingly. This person is a wanted criminal of my heavenly Taoism. I'm just arresting a wanted criminal of my heavenly Taoism. What does it have to do with others? Suddenly, many people felt like spitting saliva. Even if everyone knew that the eternal divine king had reached a tacit agreement with these creatures from the outer realm to eliminate Yi Shiwen, they had no evidence. Which one of these people wasn't smart? Naturally, they wouldn't leave any evidence behind. As long as he refused to admit it, who could do anything to him? One must know that he was at the peak of the sixth realm. In the future, he would have the opportunity to enter the seventh realm. With his cultivation, as long as he didn't admit it, then who could force him? It's wonderful, wonderful. Yi Shiwen chuckled. It's said that heavenly Taoism has always been unscrupulous. I've only heard of it before, but now I've seen it for myself. How dare you collude with creatures from the outer realm? Eternal Divine King's expression became even more indifferent. Indistinctly, there was a hint of malevolence. He knew that he couldn't hide it from others. However, there was no evidence for this matter. As long as he didn't admit it, who could do anything to him? Sweet words are stingy. No matter how eloquent you are, it's useless. Eternal Divine King was determined not to give him a chance to speak again. He immediately attacked. In an instant, all kinds of light flooded the universe. No one could see clearly what was happening between the heavens and the earth. Yi Shiwen instantly felt a terrifying coercion pressing down on his body. Sinner, quickly bow your head and admit your guilt. A cold and stern voice came from afar and directly reached his ears. This made Yi Shiwen feel a sense of guilt in his heart. It was as if he had committed a heinous crime. A force directly blasted into his heart. Break for me, Yi Shiwen shouted loudly. His eyes suddenly opened and turned into a double pupil. He directly saw through everything in front of him. He saw that it was none other than Eternal Divine King who was shouting at him. An emperor finally woke up from this bewitching force. He couldn't help but take a breath of cold air. The light emitted by Eternal Divine King seemed to have an unimaginable temptation. It could bewitch people's minds and make them completely obey the control of heavenly Taoism. Such a powerful method. Even an emperor might fall into his trap if he's not careful. I've only heard about it before. I've never seen it before. It's so powerful. Isn't it very powerful? It is said that heavenly Taoism used this method to take in many foreign creatures as protectors. It can be said to be a lotus flower with words. It's an amazing method. Immediately, an emperor said hatefully. He almost fell in a trap just now. If Eternal Divine King's target wasn't Yi Shiwen and not him, he might have suffered a big loss this time. How could he not hate? Seeing that Yi Shiwen had easily broken free from his mind control, even the Eternal Divine Emperor was a little surprised. Although he knew that for an Emperor King of Yi Shiwen's level, the bewitchment under normal conditions could be said to be of little use, it was almost useless. This made him completely vigilant. This man in front of him must not be underestimated. You want to bewitch me and control me with such insignificant skills? Yi Shiwen smiled indifferently. His double pupil was incomparably cold. The double pupil magical ability itself had the ability to see through falsehood. In addition, he had the enlightening mind ancient tree. It could even be said that this method was useless against him. If this is all you have, then you will die together with Shura, Divine Emperor. As soon as Yi Shiwen's voice fell, the sky was filled with brilliance under his feet. It was as if all the essence of the world had been integrated into it. The demonic wings behind him suddenly spread out. It was like the wings of the sky, and he rushed out on the spot. Yi Shiwen's body brought the sky full of brilliance. It was like a celestial waterfall falling from the ninth heaven. He rushed towards Eternal Divine King. The Eternal Saint Emperor let out a long howl and punched out as well. Boom! Yi Shiwen's fist and Eternal Divine King's fist collided fiercely. The world shook violently, turned into endless chaos, and drowned everything. Thump, thump, thump. Eternal Divine King retreated a few steps. He was barely able to remove the terrifying huge force on his body. Such great power! A look of astonishment flashed in the eyes of the Eternal Divine Emperor. No one could understand how dreadful Yishuan's attack was if they didn't fight him personally. He could pierce through a world with one strike. He could destroy a galaxy with one strike. In the same realm, he had never seen anyone more terrifying than Yishuan. No wonder the Gongjin Tiger Emperor was beaten like a dead dog by Yishuan. It wasn't just because Yishuan had seized the initiative. In fact, his true strength was inferior to Yishuan's. Since you want to participate, then prepare to die. While he was still in shock, Yishuan had already rushed in front of him in an instant. An even more terrifying collision broke out. The fists of both sides fiercely collided again. Bang! Endless blood mist sprayed out. The muscles on Eternal Divine King's arm had burst open. The muscles on his body could no longer withstand the terrifying bombardment of Yishuan's monstrous strength and directly burst open. On the other hand, Yishuan did not move at all. The counterattack just now was as if it was nothing to him. How can he be so strong? Many people's eyes widened as if they had seen a ghost. First, it was the Gongjin Tiger Emperor, and then the Eternal Divine King. Both of them were at the peak of the sixth realm. They were famous emperors, but they had suffered a great loss in Yishuan's hands. Die! At this time, another tiger's roar came. The Gongjin Tiger Emperor leaped up and rushed towards Yishuan again. Just as Eternal Divine King thought, both sides did not need to communicate with words. They could immediately understand each other's intentions. No matter how much hatred they had, it was nothing in front of killing Yishuan. The killing intent in his heart became stronger. At this level, Yishuan was no match for him in a one-on-one fight. He had to join forces. You came just in time. I will kill you together. Chapter 31:26. Yishuan did not have the slightest fear in the face of the joint attack of two unparalleled experts of the peak of the sixth realm. The cold killing intent on his face was terrifying. Yishuan arrived in front of the Gung Metal Tiger Emperor like a dragon rising and a phoenix falling. He then launched a peerless attack. 6 paths of reincarnation fist, overturning the heaven's seal. 3,000 martial arts. All kinds of terrifying attacks turned into ripples of the Great Way and spread out to attack. Yishuan did not take a defensive stance in the face of the two experts. On the contrary, he took the offensive and directly attacked in front of them. You do have some skills. Emperor Li's eyes sparkled. With his pride, it was almost impossible for him to truly acknowledge someone. Even the giants of the seventh realm, in his eyes, had only cultivated for a longer period of time. It did not mean that he would not be able to stand in the same position in the future. However, Yishuan's amazing combat power made him look at him in a different light. Yishuan had suppressed 2 strong enemies in the same realm. It was simply shocking. Not far in front of him, Hegemon Gui Yuan was already ready to make a move. However, there was no way for him to get involved because Emperor Li's divine thoughts had not left his body for a moment. These were not within his expectations. At this time, they had secretly joined forces with the Eternal Saint Emperor. Moreover, he didn't know what kind of agreement Emperor Li had reached with Yishuan. Emperor Li was secretly standing on his side and firmly holding him back. Otherwise, he didn't believe that Yishuan could contend against the 3 of them at the same time if the 3 of them joined forces. Emperor Li. Hegemon Gui Yuan's expression became colder and colder. His eyes were filled with killing intent as he looked at Emperor Li. However, Emperor Li's face showed a somewhat disdainful smile. Hegemon Gui Yuan, you can scare others, but do you think you can scare me? You were originally my prey. If it was not for the Pantheon Palace that is about to appear, none of you will be able to escape. Emperor Li did not give in to the threat of Hegemon Gui Yuan. Perhaps in his opinion, Hegemon Gui Yuan and the others were just moving merits. Hegemon Gui Yuan, did not expect Emperor Li to be so stubborn. Normally, it would be fine. However, at this critical moment, Emperor Li was standing in front of him. Moreover, it just so happened that he was clearly aware of how formidable and terrifying Emperor Li was. If Emperor Li was determined to stop him, then he would probably be unable to accomplish anything in this encirclement. Encircle him? Do you still think you can encircle him? Now, it is hard to say who is encircling who, Emperor Li said with a cold smile. At this time, Yishuan had completely taken the initiative in the field. Although he was alone, it looked like he was chasing two people by himself. He displayed all kinds of magical powers and secret techniques to the extreme. His whole body was golden, as if it was cast in gold. It was like the rebirth of a matchless god of war. Moreover, along with the passage of time, his battles grew more and more carefree, and he was even able to comprehend numerous grand daos that ordinary people didn't even dare to imagine as he fought. The Gungjin Tiger Emperor and the Eternal Divine Emperor could clearly feel this. They could faintly feel that Yi Shiwen was getting stronger. Although this feeling wasn't obvious, it was shocking enough for an imperial monarch who had to take thousands or even tens of thousands of years to make progress. In particular, Yi Shiwen's physical body was too strong. Relying on the fact that his body was cast in Gungjin, the Gungjin Tiger Emperor could barely compete with Yi Shiwen. On the other hand, the Eternal Divine Emperor did not dare to confront Yi Shiwen head-on. He suffered too much. After several collisions, half of his body was almost shattered by Yi Shiwen. Even the recovery ability of an Emperor could not keep up with the speed of Yi Shiwen's attacks. Moreover, Yi Shiwen's attacks contained many traces of the Grand Daos that were difficult to erase. It would take a lot of time to remove these traces of the Grand Daos. This further delayed their recovery. Usually, such injuries were not a big deal. However, at this time, in the battle of the Emperor level, it was almost a fatal problem. Roar! The Gungjin Tiger Emperor roared and transformed into endless Gungjin Chi. It was dazzling. Amazing light erupted from his body and turned into the ripples of the Grand Daos that attacked Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen slapped down and directly dispersed the Gungjin Chi on the spot. At this time, the Eternal Divine Emperor directly rushed in front of Yi Shiwen and blasted down. This attack used all of his strength. Even the Divine Kingdom of Time around Yi Shiwen's time robe was penetrated. The attack directly hit in front of Yi Shiwen. Although both sides had never cooperated before, it could be said that the minds of the powerhouses who had reached this stage were connected if they wanted to cooperate. Both sides did not need to communicate verbally. They could completely cooperate. The Gungjin Tiger Emperor attracted Yi Shiwen's attention. The real killer move was here with the Eternal Divine Emperor. The surface of Yi Shiwen's body was no longer that green robe. The time robe directly emerged. The Eternal Divine Emperor's attack directly bombarded the time robe and instantly disappeared without a trace. Under normal circumstances, the attack of the Emperor level could even last forever. The only thing that could wear out the attack of the Emperor was time. At the crucial moment, Yi Shiwen used the power of time. Overturning the sky seal, Yi Shiwen shouted. He did not care about the attack of the Eternal Divine Emperor. He just backhanded the overturning the sky seal on the spot and hit the Eternal Divine Emperor. Bang! The Eternal Divine Emperor was smashed to the ground on the spot. The ground within thousands of miles evaporated. It was evaporated under the collision of a huge force. However, the eyes of the Eternal Divine Emperor still had a look of unwillingness and absurdity. It was as if he had seen the most unbelievable thing. What a joke. What did he just see? A Taoist robe made completely of time fragments. Who could break such a Taoist robe? There was more than one Taoist robe on Yi Shiwen's body. It was both offensive and defensive. This was the most terrifying thing. In the Fortune Divine Dynasty, this was extremely rare. Although there were many emperors in the Fortune Divine Dynasty, many emperors were considered to be organized. It was very rare for the Taoist tools to be lost. Even if there were extra Taoist tools, it was impossible for them to be like Yi Shiwen and concentrate all the Taoist tools on him. Moreover, even among the many Taoist tools, the time robe was still a monster among monsters. Time fragments were difficult to find. Even among the creatures like the Time Beast that were born with the power of time, only the Emperor-level Time Beast had condensed relatively large time fragments. The time fragments in the body of the Time Beast Emperor could only be used to repair the time robe. One could imagine how many time fragments the Time Lord used to refine the time robe. Even Yi Shiwen himself had some doubts about this. The origin of the Time Lord was quite extraordinary. It wasn't what ordinary people thought it was. It was just that the Time Lord appeared suddenly, and the time he shone was too short. Almost not long after he appeared, he died under the siege of many emperors of the Heavenly Clan. Moreover, that era was too long ago. Many things were only passed down by word of mouth. Even the ancient books didn't record it. Therefore, for many things, Yi Shiwen could only rely on his own speculation. He couldn't really know why. Therefore, the Eternal Divine Emperor had such an absurd expression. He was simply about to kneel. What level of attack was needed to break Yi Shiwen's defense? Not only him, but even many emperors had the same feeling at this time. Previously, they only thought that Yi Shiwen only cultivated the power of time and didn't think so much. However, now, they were completely shocked by Yi Shiwen's wealth. Some people already knew that Yi Shiwen came from a different world. They began to speculate. Could it be that the emperor from a different world was so rich? Obviously, it was not possible. Otherwise, all the emperor from a different world would become the target of everyone's attention. Yi Shiwen didn't care about their thoughts. After the overturning sky seal knocked the Eternal Divine Emperor down to the mortal world, he immediately chased after the Eternal Divine Emperor. Dying, the Avicii sword appeared in Yi Shiwen's hand. He slashed with the sword, and the sword aura turned into Avicii hell. The Eternal Divine Emperor didn't have time to resist. He was directly hit by Yi Shiwen's sword. The sword light directly split him into two halves. He was instantly injured. The Emperor's recovery ability was indeed extraordinary. However, he couldn't withstand such a terrifying injury. It was almost one sword that turned his tens of thousands of years of bitter cultivation into ashes. On the other side, the gung-metal tiger emperor paused for a moment and rushed forward. There was a somewhat tragic expression in the fierce wind. Many people doubted whether they saw it wrong. Two emperors of the peak of the sixth realm joined forces to attack Yi Shiwen. There was a kind of grief and indignation. If this kind of situation appeared on Yi Shiwen, it couldn't be more normal. However, the situation was completely reversed now. It simply made them feel absurd. Facing the gung-metal tiger emperor, Yi Shiwen just used the overturning sky seal to slap him. Bang! The gung-metal tiger emperor was directly slapped. His huge body that had transformed into its original body was suddenly sent flying. He couldn't resist at all. The surface of his body was already densely covered with all kinds of cracks. It wasn't just Yi Shiwen's attack. The previous consecutive battles had also caused cracks to appear all over his body. He looked extremely ferocious and terrifying. I must have seen it wrong. How can this be? This Yi Shiwen is simply invincible. How can he be so powerful? Doesn't that mean that we have no hope? With such a matchless villain here, the hope isn't great even if we attack. Everyone was discussing. At this moment, there was a violent fluctuation in the sky. Endless auspicious colors spread out. An immortal light sprinkled on the world. A huge monster slowly emerged in the void. Chapter 31:27. All the aura between the heavens and the earth seemed to be seized by this colossus. Everything in the entire world boiled the moment this colossus appeared. Many emperors could sense that the aura between the heavens and the earth was drawn and the laws were boiling. Everyone shifted their attention from the battle between Yi Shiwen and the Gung-Jin Tiger Emperor and the Eternal Divine Emperor. Even Yi Shiwen, who had been suppressing the two of them, was attracted by this sudden turn of events. Above their heads, an incomparably huge group of palaces gradually appeared. Everyone immediately guessed the origin of this group of palaces. Pantheon Palace. Someone cried out in surprise. Everyone held their breath. They knew very well that the reason for so many days of killing was the Pan-Heavenly Palace. The Pantheon Palace gradually appeared in the sky. It seemed to be contending with some terrifying power. The speed of its appearance was very slow. Everyone could only see its silhouette in the endless void. No, this Pantheon Palace is in a different plane. Yishuan's eyes could see through all illusions. He instantly saw that the Pantheon Palace seemed to have appeared in the void. In fact, it was still in a different plane far away. It seemed that there was a terrifying power in the world of the Pantheon Palace that was preventing the Pantheon Palace from reappearing. The Pantheon Palace was contending with this terrifying power. It wanted to break free from this terrifying power. Is there something hidden here that we don't know? Yishuan narrowed his eyes. In his mind, countless thoughts suddenly exploded. Countless calculations emerged. It was just that the information he could get at present was too little. Therefore, there was no way to determine it. And at this moment, dozens of figures directly jumped out of the void and went directly to the Pantheon Palace in the different plane. At the same time, there were bursts of terrifying attacks. The traces of the Great Way were constantly appearing and bombarding the plane's barrier. They wanted to release the Pantheon Palace. Yishuan was able to see through it, but they were able to see through it very quickly. So, they decided to help the Pan-Heavenly Palace. They didn't care too much about it. After all, they had to seize the Pan-Heavenly Palace first. An Emperor's attack was earth-shattering. Destroying a world was just a piece of cake. Not to mention the joint attack of so many Emperor-level existences. The power of their joint attack directly broke the space barrier. The entire space was pierced through and a huge hole was formed. The Pantheon Palace finally appeared in this world. Emperor Li and He Jim and Emperor Gui Yuan, who were still watching, leaped up almost immediately. They could no longer be bothered to monitor each other. They stepped on a ray of light and rushed to the front of the Pantheon Palace in an instant. Yishuan suddenly fell into a dilemma. If he continued to stay, he might lose the treasure. If he rushed to the Pantheon Palace, he would have to let the Gungjin Tiger Emperor and the Eternal Divine Emperor go. Such a dilemma only lasted for a moment. Yishuan immediately made a decision. He looked at them coldly. Then, the demon wings behind him spread out and he flew out instantly. In his mind, whether it was the Gungjin Tiger Emperor or the Eternal Divine Emperor, there was no need to worry about them. He was still improving at an amazing speed. The next time they met, it would be just a piece of cake to kill them. Seeing Yishuan leave with a sneer, the Gungjin Tiger Emperor and the Eternal Divine Emperor finally breathed a sigh of relief. Yishuan's attack just now almost made them think that they were going to die here. Even now, they still felt like they had survived a disaster. They had never thought that someone would be able to suppress them or even kill them at the same level as them. They always felt that they were the strongest. However, Yishuan's performance today had completely destroyed their worldview. There was really someone in the same realm who could be so tyrannical. It was so strong that it was unreasonable. The two looked at each other and saw a bit of horror in each other's eyes. Soon, other emperors from their respective camps flew over and took the two away. They were also on guard against each other along the way. After all, they belonged to different camps. Although they had temporarily joined forces because of Yishuan, they were still different. If they were really plotted against, then they would really have no place to cry even if they cried. I must kill him. The Gungjin Tiger Emperor gritted his teeth. He was born in a noble family. He had been guided by a famous teacher since he was young. So, he had never felt the feeling of failure. Yishuan had seized the body of the time Beast Emperor in front of him. It was already a kind of setback for him. Not to mention that he had suffered a crushing defeat in the hands of Yishuan. For him, this was tantamount to a loud slap in the face. If he couldn't kill Yishuan, then he would never be able to wash away his shame in this life. On the other side, the Eternal Divine Emperor also let out the same roar. His situation was similar to the Gungjin Tiger Emperor. He was an outstanding genius since he was young. In the end, he defeated many opponents and successfully became an emperor. He was also an outstanding person among everyone. An ordinary person couldn't be compared to him. Now, he had suffered a big loss in the hands of Yishuan. From a hunter, he had become the prey. If he didn't find a way to take revenge, he wouldn't be able to stand in front of others in the future, especially when he was full of confidence at the beginning. Now it seemed that it was a kind of silent mockery. Damn guy, I will never let him go. At this time, Yi Shiwen naturally didn't know that the two had sworn to kill him. Even if he knew, he wouldn't care much. They were just a bunch of defeated opponents. The most urgent thing now was to find a way to get the Pan-Heavenly Palace. Although the Pan-Heavenly Palace had just appeared, it was almost like it was integrated with the world. If he could get it, he would almost be in an invincible position. Yi Shiwen's movements were extremely fast, especially after the demon wings were fully unfolded. His speed soared to the limit. Although he wasn't the first to fly to the Pan-Heavenly Palace, he had almost caught up to the front of the crowd in an instant. He directly caught up with Emperor Li and the returning Principal Emperor. Emperor Li and the returning Principal Emperor saw that Yi Shiwen had caught up so quickly. Suddenly, it was as if they had seen a ghost. It was completely unexpected. He acted decisively and without hesitation. He said that he would let go of the Gung Jin Tiger Emperor and the Eternal Divine Emperor. At the same time, his movement technique is peerless. He deserves long-term attention. At this time, Emperor Li instantly had an evaluation of Yi Shiwen in his heart. Yi Shiwen's demon wings movement technique had also scared him. He was almost scared to death. He had already used his full speed, but Yi Shiwen had still caught up from behind. However, this was only a fleeting thought because they had almost immediately arrived in front of the Pan-Heavenly Palace. Through the world hole formed by the terrifying attacks of the crowd, the Pan-Heavenly Palace was destroyed. At this moment, everyone finally realized that their initial guess was right. The Pan-Heavenly Palace was indeed restricted by something. That was why it had not appeared in the world for countless years. It was only now that it finally appeared. Above the huge palace complex of the Pan-Heavenly Palace, divine order chains came from the depths of the endless void and directly inserted into the Pan-Heavenly Palace. Each of these divine order chains was dozens of feet thick. Countless such divine order chains firmly bound the Pan-Heavenly Palace in place. At the same time, all of its divine power was sealed. Therefore, the Pan-Heavenly Palace could only move forward inch by inch. It was unable to move freely. Who left behind this trick? Someone couldn't help but ask. These divine order chains were obviously extraordinary. Although many emperors could also condense such divine order chains in their bodies, the Pan-Heavenly Palace was the personal instrument of the Pan-Tian Emperor in the past. Its quality was even more terrifying than a Taoist instrument. Unexpectedly, someone could only use divine order chains to suppress it. This method was really amazing and terrifying. The battle that had taken place countless years ago suddenly appeared in the minds of many people. Pan-Tian had declined from his peak and glory. Someone had even broken into his Pan-Tian palace and eventually killed him. Since then, no one had heard of the whereabouts of the Pan-Tian palace. Previously, everyone thought that the Pan-Heavenly Palace might have a spirit. It disappeared after the death of its master, or was obtained by someone. Therefore, it had never appeared. However, now they discovered that it did not disappear, nor was it obtained by someone. Instead, it was exiled into the endless void. Therefore, for countless years, no one could know the whereabouts of the Pan-Heavenly Palace. It feels a bit like the 100 birds paying homage to the Phoenix Palace. However, although it seems to be stronger than the 100 birds paying homage to the Phoenix Palace, the supreme aura contained in it is inferior. A thought suddenly emerged in Yi Shiwen's mind. In the past, he had seen the 100 birds paying homage to the Phoenix Palace in the Heaven Realm. However, this Pan-Heavenly Palace and the 100 birds paying homage to the Phoenix Palace had their own strengths. In terms of power, the Pan-Heavenly Palace was superior. However, in terms of the supreme aura, it was inferior to the 100 birds paying homage to the Phoenix Palace. After all, the two masters of the 100 birds paying homage to the Phoenix Palace used to be supreme and ruled the heavens. Although the Pan-Tian Emperor was powerful, he only ruled the Storm Sea region. The two could not be mentioned in the same breath. However, even so, the Pan-Heavenly Palace was still priceless. If Yi Shiwen could obtain the Pan-Heavenly Palace, then no one would be able to hunt him down in the future. Even if he were to face the pursuit of a super tycoon of the Ninth Realm, he would still be as steady as a mountain and remain unmoved. Thinking of this, Yishuan immediately became excited. After a stride, he had already entered the Pan-Heavenly Palace. Behind him, whether it was Hejimenge Yuan or Emperor Li, they had almost entered the Pan-Heavenly Palace one after another. The Pan-Heavenly Palace looked huge from the outside, but there was actually a mystery inside. Chapter 31:28. The moment they stepped into the Pan-Heavenly Palace, they found that everything around them had suddenly changed. In an instant, there was endless darkness, just like the chaos before the beginning of the universe. There was nothing and nothing could be seen. Even Yishuan himself could not see himself. This is an illusory array? No, it doesn't look like an ordinary illusory array. Yishuan could not even feel his own existence, although he knew that he definitely existed. Having cultivated to such a level, there was naturally no need to mention the persistence of his Taoist heart. It could even be said that he was very stubborn. He only believed in what he saw. Even if he could not see himself, he knew that he existed. If it was an ordinary person, they might even doubt their own existence after staying in such a place for a long time. Or perhaps they were just a thought, and nothing existed at all. It was just a figment of their imagination. In that case, his consciousness would slowly dissipate. Just like when comprehending the Tao, he would slowly integrate with the Tao, become a part of the Tao, and eventually lose himself. Therefore, this array seemed to be nothing, but in fact, it was very terrifying. Although Yishuan saw through the essence of this illusory array in an instant, there was no way to see through it at once. Even when he used his spiritual power and directly displayed the dual pupils, there was no way to see through it immediately. It was as if there was a kind of power blocking in front of him, preventing him from seeing the truth, preventing him from seeing everything. However, Yishuan was not in a hurry. He just operated his martial power. Under his thoughts, his body slowly emerged, and he forcibly reappeared his physical body. At his level of cultivation, it could be said that it was not a problem to split heaven and earth. One thought could regenerate the physical body, and one thought could destroy the world. His thoughts were the will of the Tao. He sat cross-legged, and a Mingxin ancient tree in his body began to gradually emit light, so that his thoughts would not be engulfed by this darkness. Then he sat cross-legged, and all the darkness around him could not be an obstacle to him, and even became the Tao for him to comprehend. He did not know how long had passed. It seemed like a moment had passed. It also seemed like a century had passed. Yishuan suddenly opened his eyes, and his eyes turned into a mysterious light of the Tao. In front of his eyes, the darkness gradually faded and gradually restored to its original appearance. Yishuan reappeared in the main hall. It really is just an illusion array. Yishuan opened his mouth and said, it was indeed an illusory matrix. However, an illusory matrix that could enchant an emperor wasn't something that an ordinary person could do. The others were still trapped in the illusory matrix. Yishuan was the first to wake up. He even saw the figures of the Gungjin Tiger Emperor and the Eternal Divine Emperor among those figures. They had also entered the illusory matrix. However, Yishuan had indeed been lost in the illusory array for quite some time. Just a thought flashed through his mind, and he immediately got out of the range of this illusory matrix. Now that he was the only one who had woken up, it was a good time. He hurriedly dashed towards the depths of the hall. Soon, a huge inner world appeared in front of him. This inner world was very huge. It could even be said that every single palace in the Pan-Heavenly Palace was actually an inner world. Although the Pan-Heavenly Palace looked huge on the outside, its inner world was even bigger. The entire inner world was immersed in a mysterious and profound law. Yishuan could even see the law passing through it with his naked eyes. It was as if there was a mysterious power that made these laws and everything between the heavens and the earth appear in front of everyone. Yishuan could see through many mysteries at a glance. And in the center of this world, a huge stone tablet stood in the void. This stone tablet was engraved with some mysterious and ancient characters. Even Yi Shiwen couldn't understand them. He had never seen such characters before. They were completely different from the characters that were commonly used in the Fortune Divine dynasty. They seemed simple and desolate. Yi Shiwen didn't know which era and where these characters came from. These characters pointed to the original meaning of the Great Way. It was a kind of Tao text. The reason why Yi Shiwen couldn't understand them was that he didn't have a deep understanding of these great ways. In fact, many of them were beyond the scope of Yi Shiwen's understanding. Could these characters have been left behind by the Pan-Heavenly Lord? Yi Shiwen immediately reacted. Was there any Taoist text in the world that he couldn't understand? It was simply impossible. Only the Taoist text left behind by a heavenly master-level expert could possibly be incomprehensible to him, because the Tao text contained the understanding of the Great Way. If one didn't have that understanding of the Great Way, it was naturally impossible to understand the meaning of the Tao text. But he still knew that these Tao texts were very precious. Yi Shiwen immediately formed a big hand and grabbed towards the stone tablet. The stone tablet immediately burst into dazzling, blazing light, and Yi Shiwen's hand was immediately bounced back. Divine objects had spirits. Even if this stone tablet itself was ordinary, these Tao texts engraved on it would absorb the world's spiritual energy for a long time. Entwined with the rules of the world, even an ordinary stone would become a divine object of the world. It's a little interesting. Yi Shiwen wasn't discouraged. Originally, he had formed a big hand casually. But now, endless laws entwined in the sky and formed a big hand. Then he grabbed this stone tablet. Bang! The spiritual light and the dazzling divine radiance on the stone tablet were immediately extinguished by Yi Shiwen. There was no way to resist. After all, no matter how powerful the divine object was, it was impossible to compete with a powerful Emperor Lord like Yi Shiwen. This stone tablet was quickly grabbed by Yi Shiwen into his inner world. As soon as it entered Yi Shiwen's inner world, the stone tablet still wanted to break free. However, it was immediately suppressed by the martial Emperor seal. The martial Emperor seal transformed into 3,000 martial arts. Each martial art would transform into a divine chain that would firmly fix this stone tablet in place. This made it impossible for the stone tablet to break free. As soon as Yi Shiwen grabbed the stone tablet, the vision in the world disappeared without a trace in an instant. It was as if all of this didn't exist at all. The entire world returned to its normal appearance. The original strange vision of the flying laws in the sky disappeared without a trace, as if it had never existed. And just after a few breaths, two figures jumped in almost one after another. It was none other than Hegemon Emperor Gui Yuan and Emperor Li. The two of them broke through the illusory array almost at the same time and appeared here at the same time. Especially Hegemon Gui Yuan, who looked directly at Yi Shiwen. He was also a little surprised that Yi Shiwen could break through the illusory array so much earlier than them. But soon his eyes looked at the entire world. His eyes were first filled with shock, then full of disappointment. Impossible! How can it not exist? Hegemon Emperor Gui Yuan murmured to himself. Could it be that the legendary Tao scripture stone inscription doesn't exist? Hegemon Emperor Gui Yuan murmured to himself while frantically probing with his divine senses. It seemed as if he was looking for something. However, Emperor Li didn't think so much. He was just surprised that Yi Shiwen came in earlier than them. Yi Shiwen's heart skipped a beat because he heard Hegemon Emperor Gui Yuan's words. Tao Scripture Stone Inscription. He immediately understood that the Tao Scripture Stone Inscription that Hegemon Emperor Gui Yuan was talking about should be the stone tablet that was engraved with supreme Tao runes. However, what exactly was this Tao Scripture Stone Inscription? It could actually make Hegemon Emperor Gui Yuan so absent-minded. He even suspected that the main purpose of Hegemon Emperor Gui Yuan coming in was to look for this Tao Scripture Stone Inscription. Is it you? Hegemon Gui Yuan immediately looked at Yi Shiwen. Because Yi Shiwen had entered earlier than them, if there was a possibility that the stone inscription of the Tao Scripture could be lost, it would definitely be in Yi Shiwen's hands. Yishuan didn't care about him at all. Emperor Li, who was at the side, also noticed the situation over here. This was because he also noticed that He Jimin Emperor Gui Yuan seemed to be looking for something. After failing to find it, he gritted his teeth and looked at Yi Shiwen. Could it be that Yi Shiwen had really obtained some extraordinary magic weapon? Emperor Li had already guessed many of the reasons for the situation with just a little speculation. However, he didn't know what He Jimin Emperor Gui Yuan was looking for. Could it be that it was really something extraordinary? At the same time, his eyes were staring at He Jimin Emperor Gui Yuan, who knew that after He Jimin Emperor Gui Yuan blurted out this sentence, he seemed to have realized something and immediately stopped talking. However, a pair of ferocious eyes were firmly staring at Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen also realized that this Tao scripture stone inscription might really be an extraordinary existence. Otherwise, He Jimin Emperor Gui Yuan wouldn't have behaved like this. With the strength that Yi Shiwen had displayed just now, if it wasn't for the fact that it was of great importance, He Jimin Emperor Gui Yuan wouldn't dare to glare at him so angrily. However, He Jimin Emperor Gui Yuan obviously didn't want to reveal this information to Emperor Li. Obviously, he was also afraid that Emperor Li would join the competition after learning about it. At that time, there would be another peerless competitor. Although Yi Shiwen wasn't afraid of Emperor Li, he was still slightly relieved that He Jimin Emperor Gui Yuan didn't say it. He also didn't want to go against Emperor Li. However, he became vigilant in his heart. Since this Tao scripture stone inscription was so important, He Jimin Emperor Gui Yuan would definitely not let it go. Even if he couldn't do anything to Yi Shiwen, He Jimin Emperor Gui Yuan had the support of a supergiant like Sky-Shaking Turtle Emperor. In a short period of time, Yi Shiwen was definitely not a match for him. At this time, Yi Shiwen's expression didn't change, but his heart was already overflowing with murderous intent. He was thinking of many ways to kill He Jimin Emperor Gui Yuan, who knew this secret before leaving the Heavenly Palace. Even if He Jimin Emperor Gui Yuan wasn't sure, he didn't want to let go of this hidden danger. When Emperor Li saw that both of them were silent, it was obvious that there was some tacit understanding between them. He suddenly felt a little depressed, and there was a commotion behind the three of them. More sovereign emperors broke through the illusory array and leaped in. Chapter 31:29. Although the illusory array at the entrance of the palace was impressive, those who could rush in here were super experts of the emperor level. They had already walked their own path on the heavenly Tao. They had already stepped into an unprecedented realm. This illusory array was difficult to deal with, but it could only stop them for a short period of time. The two leaders among these emperor-level experts were Tiger Emperor Gung Jin and He Jimin Emperor Gui Yuan. In just a short period of time, their injuries were almost healed. Although they did not know if there would be deeper injuries, their combat power had recovered by more than half. It was not comparable to before. The difficulty of dealing with emperor-level experts was evident. If one could not kill them all in one go, then it would be almost impossible to kill them. It was rare to see someone like Yi Shiwen who could slaughter emperor-level experts like chopping cabbages. It could even be said that only Yi Shiwen could do it. The two of them were a little vigilant. At the same time, they looked at Yi Shiwen with gritted teeth. They could not wait to tear him into pieces. Yi Shiwen saw that these people had already jumped into the hall. Obviously, there was nothing good left in this hall. He didn't stay for long. He stepped on an escape light and disappeared in front of everyone. Emperor Li, who came behind Yi Shiwen, also stepped on an escape light and disappeared. He had already checked. There was nothing good in this hall. If there was, it might have fallen into Yi Shiwen's hands. Previously, he also had some doubts about He Jimin Emperor Gui Yuan's words. There must be something extraordinary that fell into Yi Shiwen's hands. However, Yi Shiwen was not an ordinary person. It was not worthwhile to become enemies with Yi Shiwen for a heavenly Tao item. Yi Shiwen was an existence that could completely suppress Tiger Emperor Gung Jin and He Jimin Emperor Gui Yuan. He even almost killed Emperor Li. Such a person could be said to be extremely dangerous. If it was not necessary, Emperor Li did not want to offend such an existence. The others also looked at each other. Soon, they also dispersed and flew towards the various palace worlds. They were also powerful people. With a sweep of their divine senses, they knew that there was nothing good in this palace. Soon, only Eternal Divine Emperor, Tiger Emperor Gungjin, and Hegemon Emperor Gui Yuan were left. Even the people they brought had scattered to fight for the heavenly Tao items. Although those Emperor-level experts temporarily obeyed their command, it was only temporary. After all, they were Emperor-level experts. How could they really be willing to be their subordinates? If we don't get rid of this monster, it will be a great threat to all three of us. Tiger Emperor Gungjin gritted his teeth and said. He was the first to fight with Yi Shiwen, so he knew Yi Shiwen's strength the best. But what shocked him the most was not Yi Shiwen's strength, but Yi Shiwen's amazing progress. He remembered that when he first noticed Yi Shiwen, he was only at the peak of the 5th realm. Although Yi Shiwen was powerful at that time, he didn't put him in his eyes. In the eyes of the Gung Metal Tiger Emperor, defeating Yi Shiwen was not a difficult task at all. Realm Expert level of the Realm Expert. Yi Emperor Yi Realm. Yi Realm Expert level Expert. Had already. Who with? Yi Realm Expert of Emperor level Realm Expert level Expert. And when he appeared again, he had already surpassed the 6th level and could stand shoulder to shoulder with him. No, he might even be stronger than him. Thinking of such a speed of improvement, he couldn't help but be shocked. He could faintly guess that Yi Shiwen's cultivation speed was related to the time fragment. Otherwise, with the cultivation speed of an emperor, even if he suddenly became enlightened, it would be impossible to progress to this point in such a short period of time. However, Yi Shiwen was so scared that he decided to use the precious time fragment in a short period of time. His wisdom was definitely not that of an ordinary person. He must be careful. That's right. I must make him die without a burial place. The Eternal Divine Emperor said while gnashing his teeth. He had been beaten like a dead dog, even though it was 2 against 1. If he couldn't kill Yi Shiwen and take revenge, then he might not have a foothold in the heavenly Taoism in the future. In fact, he might even be reduced to a laughingstock. Hegemon Gui Yuan nodded. Initially, he wanted to kill Yi Shiwen because of the sky-shaking Turtle Emperor. However, he now had another reason to kill Yi Shiwen. The Tao Scripture Stone inscription was extremely important. He couldn't allow it to fall into the hands of others. Therefore, he wouldn't be stingy in using any means. It's just that this guy is not only ferocious, but he is also extremely good at scheming. It's almost impossible to kill him without planning properly, said the Gung Metal Tiger Emperor. He had almost suffered a big loss in Yi Shiwen's hands. It could be said that he had a lot of experience in this aspect. However, this wasn't a good experience. The 2 people who had a fortuitous encounter also approved of this. They didn't mind cooperating with their old enemy in order to eradicate Yi Shiwen. We must plan properly. We mustn't let him be arrogant. The 3 experts had joined hands. They even dared to plot against the heavens. Yi Shiwen naturally didn't know the plans of the 3 experts. However, he could guess that it was impossible for them to simply let it go. They must have a backup plan. Since you all want to come to me, that's great. Don't let me down. Let's go together and settle this together. Yi Shiwen's face revealed a somewhat cold smile. To him, these 3 people were also a great threat. The sovereign emperors of the 6th realm were definitely not ordinary people. Moreover, they all had a huge force behind them. Any one of them could make Yi Shiwen suffer a grievance. If these 3 people used the forces of the 3 major forces to surround and intercept him after he left, that would be the real trouble. It would be better to eliminate them as soon as possible. Therefore, although he didn't know the plans of the 3 experts, it was actually within his calculations. He was now waiting for the 3 experts to come and die together. Ha ha, since I'm going to pierce through the heavens, I'll do it even more. Yi Shiwen smiled coldly. As his thoughts drifted away, Yi Shiwen had already left the space of this hall and entered another space. However, as he broke through more and more palaces, he found that there were almost no heavenly treasures in the inner space of these palaces. It was as if they had been swept clean. That's not right. With the environment of the pan-heavenly palace, whether it is the spiritual energy or the natural law, Even if it was originally empty, some heavenly treasures would naturally be born after a long time. How could there be no heavenly treasures at all? Yi Shiwen was a little surprised. Heavenly treasures naturally couldn't be born out of thin air. There must be a suitable environment for them to be born. Obviously, the Pan-Heavenly Palace was such a suitable environment. However, the problem was that he didn't find any decent heavenly treasures. Occasionally, he found some heavenly treasures, but their age was very short. It was only 1,000 years old. Although it was considered precious to the outside world, it was not worth mentioning in his eyes. It's like someone is harvesting it. Yi Shiwen narrowed his eyes and made a terrible speculation. However, he quickly overturned this idea. This was impossible. The Pantheon Palace had been chained up by countless divine chains and banished into the endless void. This should be the first time it had appeared in the world. Who would be able to harvest it? Not to mention that the plunder was so clean. It was simply 1 meter high. Could it be that someone in the Pan-Heavenly Palace survived? Yi Shiwen suddenly felt a chill on his back. His cultivation and computing ability had already climbed to the peak of perfection. So, he could spread out many thoughts with just one thought. Logically speaking, even if there was a peerless powerhouse who survived the battle of the Pan-Heavenly Palace, he should have already fallen. Although the lifespan of an emperor-level creature was long, it was only tens of millions of years. Even if they used various secret techniques and many heavenly treasures to extend their lifespan, how long could they live? It had been more than 100 million years since the era of Pan-Heavenly Venerable. How could anyone survive? Unless there was an emperor-level creature who cut off their own magical way and finally achieved the law way, transcending life and death. Thinking of this, Yi Shiwen also felt a chill. If such a person really existed, then this place would be very dangerous. Speaking of which, wasn't Pan-Heavenly Venerable the most typical example? Therefore, according to many legends, there was a method in the Pan-Heavenly Palace that could allow emperor-level creatures to cut off their own way. This attracted countless emperor-level creatures to appear. Many thoughts spread out like a dense cobweb. However, he didn't stop. He continued to search the worlds one by one. Soon, he also encountered other emperor lords. And he also knew that these emperor lords were the same as him. All of them had transformed into nothingness. Just as he had guessed earlier, many treasures and heavenly treasures in this world had already been plundered by others. The 1 meter higher sky hadn't given them a chance to do so. As he went deeper, he met more and more other emperor lords. Everyone took different routes to the same destination. Gradually, they headed towards the deepest part of the palace, the Pan-Heavenly Palace. In fact, that was the true Pan-Heavenly Palace. The other halls and senior sisters were just a cluster of palaces that had been derived from it. During the most glorious period of Pan-Heavenly Venerable, this was almost the highest holy place in the Stormy Sea region. Countless powerhouses came to worship it every day. This was also the ultimate purpose of everyone's trip. Even if there was not a trace of treasure in so many palaces, everyone was unwilling to give up like this. That was their final goal and their last hope. Taoist Wu Di, it seems that you have also gained nothing. At the entrance of the real hall of the Pan-Heavenly Palace, Emperor Li looked at Yi Shiwen with a smile on his face. It seemed that not gaining anything was not a blow to him. Chapter 31:30. It seems that Taoist Emperor Li has also gained nothing. Yi Shiwen looked at Emperor Li with a smile on his face. It was not surprising, and it was not that he was lucky. He just happened to pass through those worlds without heavenly treasures. It seems that the real treasure should be inside, Emperor Li said. As he said this, Emperor Li's eyes burst with a burst of amazing light. He looked towards the Pantheon Palace, and a smile appeared on his face. It really is inside. Yi Shiwen looked at Emperor Li's eyes. It was indeed an amazing magical power, not inferior to his own dual pupils. The foundation of the Fortune God dynasty was really terrifying. They could actually have such a magical power of the sky. Looking at Emperor Li's appearance, it was obvious that he was not as proficient in the sky as the Jade Eye Emperor. Just an ordinary emperor could also have such amazing cultivation in this aspect. The foundation of the Fortune God dynasty was more profound than he thought. Yishuan heard this and also opened his dual pupils. Suddenly, the fog in front of the Pantheon Palace could no longer block his vision. In his eyes, endless light suddenly soared into the sky. Everywhere he looked, he saw that the entire main hall of the Pantheon Palace was like a huge treasure house. He did not know how many divine objects were blooming with their own amazing light. Even Yishuan hadn't seen many heavenly treasures before, so it was obvious that they were unique to the Fortune world. In fact, they might even be unique to other different worlds. Therefore, Yishuan hadn't seen them even with his vast knowledge. Yishuan could not help but take a breath of cold air. Although, because of the fog, Yishuan's range of vision was very small, but the part that he could see was also very amazing. The entire main hall was as bright as day, as if the night would never be able to invade. However, what made the entire main hall as bright as day was not the divine light of the divine objects, but the ancient lamps. These ancient lamps were actually fueled by the great way origin of the emperor. Beneath each ancient lamp was a vat of the imperial lord's great Tao quintessence. That was why these ancient lamps were able to burn eternally and never be extinguished. It was to the extent where even these ancient lamps were extraordinary. They were part of an extremely formidable magical artifact. These ancient lamps should be a complete set of magic tools. Now that they were separated and used as ordinary lamps, it was simply a reckless waste of God's gifts. The light emitted by these ancient lamps was not only as bright as daytime, but it also had the function of dispelling all the darkness. If a person cultivated under these ancient lamps, he or she would have a tranquil heart. The effect of not falling into the darkness was very similar to the effect of the enlightening mind ancient tree. However, these ancient lamps were more professional than the enlightening mind ancient tree. It was common knowledge that the cultivation of an emperor realm lord couldn't be smooth sailing. There was always the danger of chi deviation. However, Yishuan wasn't afraid in the myriad heavens. That was because any heart demon would dare to approach him in the myriad heavens. In fact, his protective aura shield would grind them to pieces the moment they approached him. What heart demon ancestor? Even the real heart demon ancestor wasn't his match. However, it was different in the Fortune God dynasty. The heart demons here were equally terrifying. Some heart demons had even succeeded in becoming emperor realm lords. They had walked a path that no one had ever walked before. They had opened up the heart demon heaven above the myriad heavens. It was the base camp of the heart demons. They were very rampant. It was said that the real heart demon ancestor was a heavenly master. In order to eliminate these heart demons that were endangering the world, the Fortune God dynasty had even organized an expeditionary force to go on an expedition to the heart demon heaven. Who knew that this expeditionary force would be taken advantage of by the heart demons? Not only did they fail to eliminate the heart demons, but they also became the slaves of the heart demons. Since then, the heart demons weren't just an illusory existence. With this expeditionary force as the foundation, they could even influence the situation of the Fortune God dynasty. They would go on expeditionary campaigns, invade various worlds, and seize experts as slaves to join their heart demon army. The heart demons of the myriad heavens were simply not as terrifying as the heart demons of the Fortune God dynasty. Experts from all sides couldn't do anything about these heart demons. As long as there were cultivators, they would naturally have heart demons. They were naturally born with them. They were the negative part of the cultivator's mind. There was no way to avoid them. Even emperor lords could fall prey to them. And if one was accompanied by these ancient lamps, any heart demons that dared to approach them would all be courting death. In the entire main hall, there were many extraordinary heavenly treasures. But soon, the fog regained the upper hand and blocked Yishuan's vision. Fellow Taoist martial emperor, you must have seen it too. Emperor Li couldn't help but exclaim in admiration. I've only heard that Pan Tian accidentally obtained a set of great illuminating lamps. I didn't expect it to be true. Pan Tian relied on this set of great illuminating lamps to fight back against the heart demon heaven. He killed his way to the heart demon heaven and turned it upside down. He completely eliminated the heart demons that were born in his heart. Since then, he was no longer affected by the heart demons, and his cultivation naturally progressed at a rapid pace. Yi Shiwen's eyes immediately lit up when he heard this. If what Emperor Li said was true, then the Emperor's origin below was nothing compared to the great illuminating lamps. This kind of special Dao tool was much more precious than ordinary Dao tools. It should be known that ever since the birth of cultivators had given birth to their own heart demons. After these heart demons were born, they would appear in the heart demon heaven. No one knew where the heart demon heaven was. They only knew that these heart demons were connected to the cultivator. Even Emperor Lords were no exception. However, Emperor Lords were usually very strong-willed and would not be affected at all. But this didn't mean that these heart demons did not exist. It was just that these heart demons were hidden in the heart demon heaven. They could appear at any time and kill people at any time. Many Emperor Lords hated these heart demons so much that they gnashed their teeth. But there was nothing they could do because they didn't know where the heart demon heaven was. Moreover, everyone had seen the tragic fate of that expeditionary army. After that, the heart demon heaven was no longer just an illusion. With this expeditionary army as the foundation, the heart demon heaven even gave birth to many experts with physical bodies. They could influence the situation in the fortune realm. Their influence and combat power could not be mentioned in the same breath. Yi Shiwen naturally knew that he also had many heart demons. He also had obsessions in his heart. All cultivators had obsessions. Without obsessions, there was no way to achieve Tao. But at the same time, these obsessions would turn into heart demons and become the biggest obstacles for cultivators. Even Yi Shiwen was no exception. However, he knew that there was nothing he could do about it. He had the Mingxin ancient tree to protect him, so the inner demons could not do anything to him. However, if he had the opportunity to kill his way back to the heart demon sky and completely wipe out his inner demons, then the many cultivation barriers he faced would no longer be considered as barriers. Many obstacles that might have been stuck would disappear without a trace. When that time came, Yi Shiwen's cultivation speed would be much faster. Thinking of this, Yi Shiwen was naturally very tempted. He must snatch it. Dear Emperor Li, both of us have seen the many divine objects in the Pan-Heavenly Palace. How about we join forces and split the divine objects in the Pan-Heavenly Palace equally? Yi Shiwen immediately said, Equally? You two are really arrogant. A cold voice came over. The Eternal Sage Emperor had also arrived in front of the Pan-Heavenly Palace. I want to split it equally. What can you do? Yi Shiwen said coldly. Equally? You are too optimistic. The Gongjin Tiger Emperor had also appeared, and next to the Gongjin Tiger Emperor was the Gui Yuan Sage Emperor. Behind these three emperors were the Emperor Lords and Emperor-level creatures of their respective camps. Since they could not find any valuable targets, everyone's target had already gathered here. It wasn't just them. Soon, many other imperial emperors arrived as well. Dear friends, Yi Shiwen is really greedy. He wants to split the many treasures in the Pan-Heavenly Palace equally with Emperor Li. Obviously, he doesn't want to leave anything for us. Eternal Sage Emperor said slowly. Suddenly, the complexions of the other emperors changed. They looked at Yi Shiwen and Emperor Li with dissatisfaction. The martial power of these two people was extremely tyrannical. However, it was too unsightly. With so many people here, they dared to discuss splitting the treasures. What's wrong? Can't I? Emperor Li was not a person who was afraid of trouble. Suddenly, a smile appeared on his face. Obviously, he agreed with Yi Shiwen's method of splitting. If he was alone, he would not stand up to attract attention. However, with Yi Shiwen as an alliance, it was completely different. He had also seen Yi Shiwen's strength just now. Even if we split it, I will ask again. Who is in favor? Yi Shiwen said lightly. Who is against? Yi Shiwen's gaze was like a knife. He looked directly at the crowd, as if he wanted to see who would stand up to oppose. This made many emperors who wanted to stand up to oppose a little hesitant. They also understood the principle of shooting the bird that stands out. It was true that the tallest tree in the forest would be destroyed by the wind. However, Yi Shiwen was obviously well established. It was hard to say whether the wind could blow him away. At least, they did not want to be the first to raise their hand to oppose. The three of them were a little annoyed when they saw that everyone was terrified. The three of them were the leaders. They had thought that they would be able to successfully force Yi Shiwen to retreat. However, they didn't expect that Yi Shiwen's strength would far exceed their expectations. They did not care about their opposition at all. It was as if they wanted to eat alone. Emperor Li, do you really want to get involved with this person? You should know that he is a person who has personally issued a wanted order. Eternal Sage Emperor gritted his teeth and looked at Emperor Li. How interesting. Since when can the heavenly Taoism order the Fortune God dynasty to do things? If you're not convinced, just fight. I like what Martial Emperor said. Emperor Li grinned. Who is in favor? Who is against? Chapter 31:31. Who agrees? Who objects? Emperor Li looked at the rest with a playful smile on his face. He found that Yi Shiwen was really to his liking. Yi Shiwen's nickname was Li, which showed what kind of character he was. As the saying goes, there are only wrong names, but no wrong nicknames. The word Li was enough to say enough. Even if he was arrogant and despotic, he had never dared to challenge a group of emperors at the same time. Yi Shiwen didn't seem to care at all. For him, unless there was a top master of the seventh realm, there would be no difference. For him, the number of people was no longer a consideration. Many of the sovereign emperors looked displeased. These people were existences who could summon the wind and summon the rain in the fortune world. As long as it was something they wanted, no one could refuse them. Not to mention that so many people were blocked by Yi Shiwen and Emperor Li. Thinking about it made them feel extremely unhappy. Don't be afraid. We have so many people. Why should we be afraid of the two of them? An emperor shouted. The spirits of all the imperial monarchs were refreshed. Indeed, they were invincible imperial monarchs in the world. When had they fallen to the point of living their lives at the mercy of others? Emperor Wu, Emperor Li, do you two really want to take all the wealth? Isn't your appetite a little too big? Some emperors said unhappily. They did not intend to take all the wealth, but at least get a share. Yi Shiwen and Emperor Li were not the only ones who had the celestial magic power. These emperors also had their own celestial magic power. Even if they did not have it, with their cultivation and strength, they could deduce a celestial magic power in minutes. So in fact, they also saw the wealth in the main hall of the Sky Palace. It would be a lie to say that he was not tempted. Just the jars of Sovereign Lord Source energy were extremely precious treasures. Emperor Wu, Emperor Li, we are not greedy. But if you want to take everything for yourself, then don't blame us for standing on the side of the eternal divine emperor. An emperor said. He was a senior emperor with unfathomable strength. Although he could not be compared with Yi Shiwen and the others, he was not weak either. His words were in line with everyone's thoughts. Moreover, the main hall of the Heavenly Palace has clearly been sealed by a force. What's the point of arguing now? The most important thing is to find a way to open the main hall of the Pantheon Palace. That emperor had hit the nail on the head. He had pointed out the most pressing matter in front of everyone. If it weren't for this reason, Yi Shiwen and Emperor Li would have already divided up the treasures in the main palace hall. They wouldn't have given them any chance. Fellow Taoist Martial Emperor, what do you think? Emperor Li looked at Yi Shiwen. He wasn't afraid of these people. The only troublesome ones were Tiger Emperor Gongjin, Tyrant Emperor Gui Yuan, and Eternal Divine Emperor. The others were only a little troublesome. However, the old emperor's words weren't unreasonable. If they were stuck in a stalemate, they would not be able to open the entire treasury. Instead, it would be a waste of time. Before they came here, They had already calculated that the time of the Pan-Heavenly Palace's appearance was very limited. It would be too wasteful to use it in such a confrontation. Yi Shiwen understood Emperor Li's intention in an instant. It was indeed the case for him. Moreover, there was no need to provoke public anger for this matter. He was merely responding to the aggressiveness of Tiger Emperor Gongjin and the other two. He knew that the possibility of taking everything for himself wasn't great, even though he had such an intention. Therefore, he nodded and agreed with Emperor Li's meaning. Seeing that Yi Shiwen, the most unyielding person, had finally relented, the many sovereign emperors heaved a sigh of relief. If it was not as a last resort, they would not be willing to confront Yi Shiwen head-on. Even if it was as a last resort, they would most likely choose to retreat. The combat power that Yi Shiwen had shown previously was too amazing. Tiger Emperor Gongjin and Eternal Divine Emperor, who were such existences, were actually beaten like two dead dogs in front of him. In this Pan-Heavenly Palace, Yi Shiwen might not be the first, but he was almost there. Unless they were really crazy, they wouldn't dare to confront the first person in the Pan-Heavenly Palace. The faces of Tiger Emperor Gongjin and the others were equally ugly. Yi Shiwen's actions clearly showed that he didn't put them in his eyes at all. In other words, he didn't care what they thought. However, Yi Shiwen had shown enough strength just now. Everyone knew that time was precious. They all sat down and began to work together to calculate. The calculation ability of one Emperor was amazing enough. Moreover, there were so many Emperors sitting here who were calculating at the same time. In just a short while, they had already calculated some clues. This formation can only be opened by the blood sacrifice of Emperors. Everyone's face suddenly became extremely ugly. Where could they find other Emperors now? They could only choose from among them. What else is there to think about? We don't have much time left. We need 5 Emperors for the blood sacrifice. Let's catch 5. Tiger Emperor Gongjin said indifferently. For him, this was a very normal thing. There was nothing strange about it. As for Eternal Sage Emperor, Primordial Emperor Gui Yuan, and even Emperor Li, their faces were cold. They were used to this. There weren't many places that required the blood sacrifice of Emperors, but they didn't lack the courage to do so. Some of the weaker sovereign emperors immediately wanted to retreat. They were mighty figures who could summon the wind and summon the rain in the fortune realm. Now, they might actually become the target of someone else's blood sacrifice. What kind of joke was this? What actually required the blood sacrifice of Emperors? Almost instantly, a figure flew into the distance. It was an Emperor-level creature. He finally couldn't stand it anymore and was the first to escape. His strength was the lowest. He only had the strength of the first realm. At this moment, he was completely regretful. He shouldn't have come at all. If he wasn't greedy, he wouldn't have been forced to this point. You want to leave? Stay here. The first to make a move was Primordial Emperor Gui Yuan. He just formed a big hand and directly grabbed the Emperor-level creature. Although they both belong to the outer domain, they usually belong to different races. If there wasn't a super enemy like the Fortune God Dynasty, their daily killings were probably enough to shock everyone. At this time, Primordial Emperor Gui Yuan naturally wouldn't be stingy to use his life to open up a path for himself. Roar! How could this Emperor-level entity allow itself to be captured without putting up a fight? With a backhand strike, every pore on its body opened up. This backhand strike was like a heaven-piercing, earth-shattering attack. It felt as if the world itself was about to collapse. No one could underestimate an expert at the Emperor level. Even if he was only at the first realm, his power was still infinite. You're courting death. If I want you to die, do you dare to live? Primordial Emperor Gui Yuan shouted coldly. His real body directly chased after the Emperor-level creature. Those terrifying attacks that could penetrate the world landed on his body, but they could only turn into a rain of light that filled the sky. They couldn't do anything to him at all. Around his body, there was an endless amount of power. There was a supreme law spreading out. Although he was completely suppressed by Emperor Li before and didn't dare to move, it couldn't be said that his strength was weak. On the contrary, It could be seen how strong he was just from this alone. With just the power of one person, he completely suppressed the great path of the Emperor-level creature. Although they were both Emperor-level creatures, the difference in strength was too big. Between heaven and earth, all the great paths were wailing, as if they were wailing for the old man, an Emperor-level creature. Boom! The two sides directly collided. The violent shock wave that spread in the universe hit the bodies of many Emperors, causing their clothes to flutter. The expressions of the top Emperors were indifferent, while the faces of the weaker Emperors were pale. They were already invincible. Under normal circumstances, there was no power that could kill them. However, this was a great figure who had also set foot on the extreme path like them. Moreover, his realm was even higher than theirs. The battle over there was intense to the extreme, but the time was very short. Facing primordial Emperor Gui Yuan, who was going all out and seemed to be venting his anger at the hands of Yi Shiwen and Emperor Li, the Emperor-level creature of the first realm was simply not enough. He was directly taken down, but he wasn't killed, because they were going to be put together for a blood sacrifice. Everyone, do you really want to kill us all? The expressions of the other weaker Emperors changed. At this moment, they deeply understood the principle of being weak was the original sin. They never thought that they would become the weakest one day. There's no other way. I think no one wants to miss out on the treasures of Pan Tian Tianzuan. Time is pressing now. Do you have any way to find other Emperors? Emperor Li said slowly. At this moment, he was on the same side as Eternal Divine Emperor and the others because they were the strongest. Emperor Li's statement immediately caused an uproar. It was equivalent to the two originally hostile sides reaching an agreement on this issue. Suddenly, more than a dozen figures instantly flew out, trying to break free with all their strength. However, how could they escape? Several top experts at the peak of the sixth realm had made their move. Even Yi Shiwen was no exception. He directly captured an Emperor-level creature of the second realm. Soon, 5 top-grade Emperor-level creatures were prepared. Among them, 3 were foreign realm creatures, and 2 were idle Emperor-level creatures of the Fortune God dynasty. They could almost be considered the weakest among the group. We will definitely not let you go. I want to curse you all. For the rest of your lives, never to even think about making an inch of progress in your cultivation. I want to curse you all to die without a burial place. Seeing that death was imminent, these Emperors cursed one after another. Chapter 31-32. Originally, Emperor-level experts were great figures whose words were the law. Even heaven and earth had to listen to their voices. If they wanted to curse someone at the cost of their life, even other Emperor-level experts would be affected. This was almost the most vicious curse. No one dared to look down on it. However, now that their power was sealed and their connection with heaven and earth was cut off, no matter how they cursed, they could only curse. Just like mortals, even if mortals cursed heaven, it would not cause any reaction. Because ants were ants, they were not qualified to be taken seriously. Do it! With an order, these Emperor-level experts were immediately beheaded. Their bodies were arranged into a formation and placed at the entrance of the palace. The blood that flowed from the severed necks did not flow into a river, nor did it flow like a river. Instead, it was absorbed by the ground of the palace with a strange force. After absorbing the essence and blood of countless Emperor-level experts, mysterious patterns appeared on the ground. These patterns formed a huge formation. As countless blood was integrated into it, it began to emit a blood-red light. The fog that was originally blocking the main hall of the Pantheon Palace was absorbed by this formation bit by bit. Everyone finally showed a joyful expression. The howls of the Emperor-level experts who were used as sacrifices were still in their ears, but did not move them at all. These people were already people with hearts of stone. Everyone watched as the layer of fog gradually thinned. Then they saw the endless light of treasures shooting out in all directions, filling the entire sky with the aura of treasures. Ha, it's finally open. Didn't everyone come for the main hall of the Pantheon Palace? At least, most people came for the trampling here. Boom! When the endless fog dissipated, the rays of light poured out like a flood that had been blocked for a long time. It directly turned into a stormy wave and swept out. Many Emperor-level experts hurriedly activated the protective aura around their bodies. The intense rays of light directly washed over their protective aura, causing it to fluctuate. Instead of being shocked, everyone was happy, because they knew very well that the more intense the rays of light were, the more amazing the wealth in the main hall of the Pantheon Palace was. Pantheon Palace. Yi Shiwen operated the martial power in his body and blocked the endless treasured lights that were rushing towards him. He was the first to open his eyes and saw the words Pantheon Palace Hall written on the inscribed board of the entire hall. The word Pan seemed to contain boundless meaning, and the word Tian seemed to contain the vastness of the world. These two words themselves contained boundless great Taos, as well as the will of Zen. At the very center of the Pantheon Palace was a powerful figure seated cross-legged on a bed of clouds. It was impossible to make out the figure's appearance. All they could sense was how vast, majestic, and incomparably powerful he was. Everything was very clear. There was only one possibility for someone to be able to sit there. It was the Pantheon Emperor. Everyone's eyes lit up at once. The body of Pantheon Venerate was here. This was the body of a legendary celestial Venerate. It was definitely priceless. In fact, it could even be considered a priceless treasure. Cultivating with such a body was equivalent to having a magic treasure that could speed up one's cultivation. Most importantly, the body of Pantheon Venerate must contain the key to controlling the Pantheon Palace. Once he gained control of the Pan-Heavenly Palace, all these divine items would belong to him. Not a single one of them would be able to escape. How could everyone not be excited? Yi Shiwen also saw that there were many divine objects around the body of the Pantheon Sovereign. These divine objects were shining brightly, making the body of the Pantheon Sovereign, who was sitting cross-legged in the middle, look even more sacred and extraordinary. Although he had already fallen, he still looked incomparably mighty. Yi Shiwen was the first to open his eyes. At the same time, he flew out immediately and stepped into the Pantheon Palace. Let's go. We must not let him seize the body of the Pantheon Emperor. At this moment, the eternal sage Emperor roared and chased after him. Beside him were Emperor Li, Hegemin Gui Yuan, Gungjin Tiger Emperor, and others. They rushed in almost at the same time. With their cultivation so close, yet worlds apart was nothing, they instantly rushed into the hall. However, they soon discovered that something was wrong. This was because Yi Shiwen had no intention of competing with them for the body of the Pantheon Emperor. On the contrary, he directly rushed to the great light lamp next to him. They also understood the significance of the great light lamp. However, they needed to make a choice at this time: the great light lamp or the body of the Pantheon Emperor. However, in just a moment, they had already made their decision. They gritted their teeth and flew directly towards the body of the Pantheon Emperor. They did not continue to chase in Yi Shiwen's direction. Naturally, Yi Shiwen also sensed this. A smile appeared on his face. He had already thought of this. In their opinion, this was definitely a big loss for a small gain. Although the great luminous lamp was amazing, it was obviously not comparable to the physical body of the Pantheon Sovereign. Many other emperors also quickly rushed in and directly rushed towards the various divine items. However, although they saw the great light lamp and were very envious, they did not dare to rush over because Yi Shiwen was standing there. Several other existences at the peak of the sixth realm were competing for the body of the Pantheon Emperor. Only he did not seem to care about it. He only wanted to seize the great light lamp. Many people couldn't help but secretly curse in their hearts. This Yi Shiwen really has no ambition. Why didn't he fight for Pantheon's body if he has such strength? Instead, he wants to fight for these heavenly treasures with us. He's such a bully. Many people were very clear about the benefits of the great light lamp. Even those who were not clear about it knew that it was also an extraordinary divine item. However, at this time, they had no choice but to watch Yi Shiwen take the divine item into his pocket. Even the vats of Emperor Source below were taken into his pocket. There was no way to stop him. He could only hold back his tears. Fortunately, there was more than one divine object here, although none of them seemed to be as miraculous as the great illuminating lamp. As long as he could obtain one of them, his trip would not have been in vain. For a time, the entire hall was in complete chaos. All kinds of curses and the aftermath of direct attacks rushed out of the Pan-Tian Emperor Hall. And the most intense fight was for the body of the Pan-Tian Emperor. Not only Emperor Li, Emperor Ge Yuan, Tiger Emperor Gung Jin, and Eternal Saint Emperor, for experts at the peak of the Sixth Realm were fighting. At the same time, there were also several emperors and emperor-level existences eyeing them covetously. Obviously, they also wanted to reap the benefits. Although their strength was slightly weaker than these four people, it was only slightly weaker. It was not considered a big deal. In a chaotic fight, there was still a chance. For a time, the whole scene was extremely chaotic, and at this time, the four people who were fighting also faintly divided into two sides. The Eternal Saint Emperor and Emperor Li were standing together, while the Gung Metal Tiger Emperor and the Gue Yuan Hegemon Emperor already had an agreement. Needless to say, they were natural allies. Both sides belonged to the Fortune God dynasty and the Outer Domain. Naturally, their sides had already been decided. There was no other choice. Eternal Saint Emperor and Emperor Li did not have any grievances. They only had a conflict because of their relationship with Yi Shiwen. But now they stood together again. The four experts could be said to be using their own means. In particular, the four of them could be considered to have a great background. It could be said that each of them had an earth-shattering divine power. It was not something that ordinary people could imagine. As long as one of them dared to approach the body of the Pan-Tian Emperor, it was possible to attract the joint attack of the other three. Therefore, for a time, it was difficult to determine who was superior. The whole situation suddenly maintained a balance. At this moment, Yi Shiwen, who was on the side, had originally planned to join the fight for the corpse of Pan-Tian Senior Venerable. He had nothing to fear, even if he had to face four people at the same time. His alliance with Emperor Li had come to an end after entering this place. What they could obtain afterwards would depend on their own abilities. Otherwise, it would be impossible to divide it evenly. However, he soon discovered something. The air began to fill with the smell of blood. At first, he thought that an emperor had fallen or been injured in an intense battle. But soon, he discovered that something was wrong. A faint layer of blood began to appear in the air. None of the emperors and emperors who were engaged in an intense battle or fighting over divine objects noticed it. It was as if they had suddenly become bloodshot. Something's wrong. Something's wrong. Yi Shiwen was very interested in the corpse of the Pan-Tian Senior Venerable. He also wanted to use it to discover the cultivation secrets of the Celestial Senior Venerable. It would be of great use to him when he attacked the Celestial Senior Realm in the future. But no matter what, he had to be careful. This matter revealed too much that was not right. From the very beginning, he had such a feeling. Later on, when it required the blood sacrifice of an Imperial Emperor-level expert to open the door, all of this seemed very abnormal. In particular, in the inner world of so many palaces, there was no divine object to be found. Obviously, it had been plundered and placed in the Pan-Tian Palace. So who did it? And this person had not appeared so far. These areas that he couldn't predict also made him feel uneasy. So, he began to gradually retreat towards the outside of the hall. When he had just retreated to the entrance of the hall, suddenly, a huge head appeared out of thin air. It was a peerless, vicious beast with an incomparably ferocious expression. The scales on its body were engraved with traces of the Great Way. Yi Shiwen immediately recognized this huge head. Wasn't this the head of the huge, vicious beast that was revealed near the crack when the Pan-Tian Palace first appeared? But compared to that day, although the head of the vicious beast was big, it was not that big. Retreat. Yi Shiwen immediately made a decision. Chapter 31-33. Yishuan immediately understood that the ferocious beast on that day must have used the magical power of Law World to become so huge. Just its head alone was enough to cover the entire crack. An idea flashed in his mind, and that was to retreat. If this was a conspiracy, then the mastermind behind the scenes should have already appeared. With this thought in mind, he immediately stepped on a sky full of escape lights and flew directly out of the hall. The huge ferocious beast finally showed its amazing side at this time. Looking from afar, its huge body seemed to cover the entire sky. This terrifying aura finally alerted many experts who were fighting for the physical body of Pantheon Emperor in the Pantheon Palace. With such a majestic aura, even if they were slow, they still reacted. They released their divine thoughts and saw a shocking scene. The huge, ferocious beast covered the sky and came over. They couldn't help but gasp. As Sovereign Emperor experts, everyone's experience went without saying. They could be considered to be very knowledgeable. It was not as if they had never seen gigantic, ferocious beasts before. Some races that had existed for a long time could even be compared to a world, and there were many races that could be compared to a planet. So, it was not enough to shock them. Even among them, there were existences with extremely huge bodies. It was just that with the terrifying aura of this ferocious beast, it was completely different. This was obviously a terrifying, ferocious beast that was at least above the 7th realm. This one could it be? An Emperor Lord's eyes widened. The mount of Pantheon Emperor, the chaotic heaven-swallowing beast. How could it be that monster? Didn't it die along with Pantheon Tianzuan? Someone suddenly exclaimed. Obviously, everyone present had heard many legends about the chaotic heaven-swallowing beast. It was rumored that the chaotic heaven-swallowing beast was found in the chaos by Pantheon Emperor. It was an extremely rare species. Its own strength was even more outstanding. It had accompanied Pantheon Emperor in battles throughout its life. It had bitten many Emperor Lords to death. Its strength was simply unfathomable. However, after Pantheon Emperor died, the chaotic heaven-swallowing beast had disappeared. No one expected it to appear here again. Previously, it was just ahead. Many people didn't see it clearly. Now that I see it, it is indeed the chaotic heaven-swallowing beast. Let's go, we can't stay here. Everyone instantly realized where the danger lay. They were well aware of how terrifying the chaos heaven-swallowing beast was. Once targeted, even an imperial emperor would end up in a terrible state. Their only chance of survival was that they had the advantage in numbers. Even if they had to fight against the chaos heaven-swallowing beast, they still had a chance of winning. Suddenly, an unexpected event occurred. Pantheon Tian, who'd been sitting on the cloud bed, suddenly opened his eyes, and his eyes flickered with a shocking, ferocious light. He stretched out his hand and made a grabbing motion. Emperor Li and the others who were closest to him came back to their senses, but it was too late. The speed of the Pantheon Tian Venerate was too fast. His huge hand reached out and grabbed the neck of the Eternal Sage Emperor. In an instant, the Eternal Sage Emperor was taken away. On the other side, one of the Gung Metal Tiger Emperor's arms was ripped off and taken away. Fortunately, he had dodged quickly. Otherwise, he would have been taken away just like the Eternal Divine Emperor. However, something even more terrifying happened. The Pantheon Tian Venerate opened his mouth, bit by bit, and swallowed the Gung Metal Tiger Emperor's arm. Crack! Crack! The sound echoed throughout the Pantheon Hall, making everyone's hair stand on end. The golden blood dripped onto the ground as the Pantheon Tian Venerate chewed. Everyone could clearly sense that the Pantheon Tian Venerate's aura had become much stronger. Previously, when the Pantheon Heavenly Venerate had been sitting there, he had only seemed lifelike. However, that was only lifelike. Now, everyone felt as though he had truly revived. He had crawled out of hell. Save me. The Eternal Sage Emperor was grabbed by the Pantheon Tian Venerate's hand. He tried to struggle, but no matter how much power he exerted, he couldn't shake the Pantheon Tian Venerate's arm. The Eternal Sage Emperor's arm seemed to be made of the hardest metal, so it couldn't be shaken at all. Let's go. Emperor Li immediately made a decision. Everyone hurriedly flew out of the hall. What kind of joke was this? Even the other Sky Path Emperor lords wouldn't risk their lives for the Eternal Sage Emperor. Although they weren't as strong as the Eternal Sage Emperor, they were still supreme Emperor lords. Their statuses were similar, so it was absolutely impossible for them to risk their lives to save the Eternal Sage Emperor. Furthermore, the Pantheon Venerate was so terrifying. As long as he was conscious, he could suppress everyone with just his physical body cultivation. The difference between a heavenly Venerate and an Emperor Lord was just too great. The latter were supreme supremacies that stood above the heavens. Furthermore, the Pantheon was an outstanding heavenly Venerate who had left behind countless ferocious legends. They simply couldn't muster up the slightest bit of resistance. They hurriedly flew out of the hall, trying to escape before the chaotic heaven-swallowing beast arrived. Don't even think of leaving. A hoarse voice came from behind them. This voice was simply indescribable. It was filled with death chi, as if it came from hell. Even the sovereign emperors felt their hair stand on end. They fled even faster. Soon after, they heard the eternal divine emperor scream. Some of them turned around and saw a terrifying scene. They only saw the eternal divine emperor's head being bitten off by Pantheon Venerate. Such a ferocious appearance frightened everyone to the point that their souls left their bodies. At their level of cultivation, it could be said that their hearts were like boulders and nothing could scare them. However, this scene completely frightened them. By the time they arrived at the entrance of the Pantheon Hall, they discovered that the ferocious beast was already very close to them. Earlier, they had felt that the ferocious beast was far away. However, in merely a few breaths' time, the ferocious beast had arrived before them. This heaven-devouring beast of chaos was extremely fast, and the laws of time and space were faintly flickering within it. It was also because of this that the Pantheon had personally entered the chaos to subdue it and make it his mount. Given Pantheon cultivation at the time, not just any ferocious beast was qualified to be his mount. Everyone was cursing out in their hearts right now. How many years had it been? Why was the heaven-devouring murderer still not dead? To think that he was still alive. This was practically not giving them any way out. Let's fight it out with him and carve out a bloody path. At this time, Emperor Li shouted and took the initiative to attack. The others didn't dare to waste any more time. They hurriedly attacked the chaotic heaven-devouring beast in the sky. Behind them, Pantheon Venerate was dragging the Eternal Saint Emperor's body, getting closer and closer. Boom! The many sovereign emperors did not dare to hold back at all, working together to launch a sneak attack. One could easily imagine how horrifying such an attack would be. That horrifying power overwhelmed everything, drowning out the entire space as if it was going to destroy the entire world. However, this was the Pantheon Palace, so it was naturally impossible for it to collapse. After all, this was the inner world of Pantheon Venerate's ritual implement. It was far more sturdy than ordinary spaces outside. We've made an opening. Let's go. Someone shouted. Everyone was immediately overjoyed. Indeed, after the combined attack of everyone, even a ferocious beast as strong as the heaven-devouring beast of chaos was pushed back a little. Finally, there was a space for everyone to escape. Everyone hurriedly fled into the distance. However, there was still an emperor-level creature that was slightly slower. Just as he was about to escape, he felt his body sink. A huge hand grabbed his leg and pulled him back. Then, he saw the face of Pantheon Venerate, and he was immediately frightened to the point where his face turned pale. He immediately gritted his teeth and made up his mind. He directly cut off Pantheon Venerate's leg and fled into the distance. Trying to escape, the Pantheon Venerate spoke slowly. His voice was hoarse like that of the god of death. He suddenly grabbed the sovereign-level life form with his hand and grabbed it. The sovereign-level life form only had time to let out a miserable shriek before he was completely turned into a bloody mist and absorbed by the Pantheon Venerate. Pan Tian Venerate slowly opened his mouth and completely turned the blood mist into a long river, which was sucked into his stomach. In just an instant, he had completely digested it. After devouring another emperor, Pan Tian Venerate's aura became much stronger. He roared in a low voice, took a step forward, and chased into the distance. The many emperors who had just escaped from the ferocious beast felt their souls leaving their bodies. This was because Pan Tian Venerate had actually chased them out of the Pantheon Palace. At the moment, he was riding on the heaven-devouring beast of chaos. The heaven-devouring beast of chaos had also become much smaller. It was now only as tall as a big horse. However, its terrifying aura did not diminish in the slightest. Under Pan Tian Venerate's control, it directly chased after the crowd. How could the crowd dare to stay any longer? They hurriedly flew out of the Pan Tian Palace. However, something even more terrifying happened. It seemed that because of Pan Tian Venerate's awakening, the entire Pan Tian Palace's nomological laws had become stronger. The space barrier had become even more difficult to pass through. The crowd could not casually tear a space passage and escape like they had when they had first entered. They could only desperately use their movement techniques to escape from the Pan Tian Palace. Very soon, Pan Tian Venerate caught up to the back of the crowd. An emperor was caught off guard and was knocked unconscious by the heaven-devouring beast of chaos. Then he was grabbed by Pan Tian Venerate and exploded into a cloud of blood mist. Everyone was running for their lives, but terror was spreading. Chapter 31-34. No one had ever experienced something like this before. It made them truly feel the ultimate horror of being trapped in a desperate situation. Because in reality, no one had ever been able to force them to this point. The legendary terror of the Empyreans had long since become a legend, as the Empyreans either fell or went into seclusion. Today, the terror that had been forgotten by everyone once again occupied everyone's hearts. The speed at which the group of sovereign emperors fled could be said to be extremely fast, even with the restriction on the usage of laws. In just a few dozen breaths' time, he had already escaped from the space where the Pantheon Hall was and fled to the other palaces. Let's split up and escape. I don't believe that he can catch all of us in one fell swoop. In the time it took for them to escape from the Pantheon Hall, 5 of them had already met with a calamity. They had no way of resisting the Pantheon Heavenly Venerate. All they had to do was put up a little resistance before they fell into the hands of the Pantheon Heavenly Venerate and were eaten. At this moment, Pantheon was like a hungry ghost that had crawled out of hell. He wanted to devour everything in sight. Right now, how could they not know that this was a huge conspiracy that was meant to lure them in? As for this Pantheon exalted emperor, regardless of whether he wasn't completely dead or had come back to life, it was still terrifying enough. It was still fine at the start. However, as more and more sovereign emperors were devoured, Pantheon Venerate seemed to be recovering his vitality. Slowly, he grew stronger, and the speed at which he captured people increased. If this were to continue, they would really be annihilated, and it would be impossible for them to escape from Pantheon. When everyone heard this, they immediately felt that it was reasonable. If they continued to gather together, then not a single one of them would be able to escape. They would all die. In an instant, dozens of powerful sovereign emperors and martial emperors transformed into streams of light that filled the sky and shot out in all directions. This move was indeed effective. Pantheon Tianzuan had no way of catching 1 or 2 of them at once. He could only chase after one of them. Apart from the person chosen by the Pantheon Venerate, who was terrified, the others immediately rejoiced. However, they didn't rejoice for long before the Pantheon Venerate caught up to that person. Then, the Pantheon Venerate grabbed him to death and devoured him. The others hurriedly ran for their lives. If this continued, none of them would be able to escape. He Jimingue Yuan was also one of them. He, Sovereign Li, and the others had the highest cultivation levels, and they were also the fastest when it came to running. The others were all at the bottom, and naturally, they could not outrun them. When he was separated from the crowd, he also ran for his life, completely separated from the many experts of the sky-shaking turtle clan. However, he couldn't care less at this moment. With such a terrifying existence chasing after him, even the ancestor of the sky-shaking turtle emperor wouldn't blame him when he returned. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but speed up his escape because he didn't know when Pantheon Venerate would catch up to him. However, just as he stepped into a palace, a shocking sword chi suddenly slashed down from the void. It was like a galaxy falling from the sky, stirring up all the laws in the world as if it was suppressing everything. At this moment, only this strand of sword chi could be felt in the world. Primordial Hegemin Emperor was caught off guard and was directly brushed by it. The sword beam brushed past his arm, leaving a huge bloody hole. The sword beam had pierced through his arm. Blood sprayed out. If he hadn't dodged in time, his entire body would have been torn to pieces by this sword chi. The sword beam finally slashed into the ground, revealing a huge, bottomless crack on the ground. It was as if this sword was about to completely sever the world in this palace. Who has it come out? Hegemin Emperor couldn't help but roar. His eyes flashed with a bit of shock and anger because he never thought that he would be ambushed here. This was because he had been in the most tense state in order to guard against Pantheon Venerate. Otherwise, he might really have fallen into the trap. I didn't expect your reaction to be so fast. A cold voice came from a void, and then a figure slowly appeared. Who else could it be but Yi Shiwen? He was dragging a long sword in his hand, and the surging, murderous aura almost turned the entire world into a hell. It's you. Hegemin Emperor's face changed. In that instant, he thought of countless possibilities, and among them, the one he was the least willing to face was Yi Shiwen. Among these people, even Emperor Li could only tie with him. At most, he had a slight upper hand and could not pose any fatal threat to him. But Yi Shiwen was different. Although they were all at the peak of the sixth realm, this person had clearly surpassed everyone's realm, and his combat power had soared to a terrifying level. But he was still comforting himself that in such a dangerous situation, under normal circumstances, Yi Shiwen shouldn't have stayed behind to deal with him. At this time, who wouldn't want to escape? That's right, it's me, Yi Shiwen said with a faint smile, holding the long sword in his hand. I thought about it, and I still can't let you leave like this. Otherwise, I'm afraid I'll have a lot of trouble in the future. You, Hegemin Emperor, didn't expect Yi Shiwen to have such a reason. So you're saying that you're going to kill even the Gungjin Tiger Emperor? He didn't mention Eternal Divine Emperor because Eternal Divine Emperor was already dead. If possible, I naturally want to kill both of you, but obviously, I don't have enough time, Yi Shiwen said faintly. He was slightly glad that Eternal Divine Emperor was already dead, which saved him a lot of effort. In the eyes of many people, Pantheon was undoubtedly a demon that crawled out of hell, but for Yi Shiwen, it was a great help. The Gungjin Tiger Emperor was seriously injured, and Eternal Divine Emperor died tragically. After thinking about it, I still think that you're more of a threat, Yi Shiwen said. Before you die, I still want to ask, what is this Tao Scripture Stone inscription? If I'm not wrong, you came here for this Tao Scripture Stone inscription. As the saying goes, when a man is about to die, his words are kind. Since you're going to die anyway, why don't you tell me? Hegemin Emperor Gui Yuan's complexion turned completely dignified. There was even a hint of despair on his face. He had thoroughly understood why Yi Shiwen had chosen him over him and the Gung Metal Tiger Emperor. Obviously, the Gung Metal Tiger Emperor had a bigger grudge against him. It turned out that it was because of the existence of this Tao Scripture Stone inscription. As expected, the Tao Scripture Stone inscription has fallen into your hands, Hegemin Emperor said coldly. Since he had already fallen out with Yi Shiwen, there was naturally no need for him to continue pretending. You took something that you shouldn't have. You'll die because of this thing sooner or later. So what if it's Pantheon? He obtained the Tao Scripture Stone inscription, so he ushered in death, and you won't be an exception. Are you trying to scare me? Yi Shiwen smiled slightly. I'm sorry, I've been scared since I was a child, but I'm not afraid of scares. However, You're right. This thing might be very dangerous, so I can't let you go. Isn't a dead man the best at keeping secrets? He Jimin Emperor's expression became even more indifferent. Yi Shiwen, you're too arrogant. Do you really think that you can kill me? When Pan Tian Tian catches up, I won't be able to escape, and you won't be able to either. At that time, both of us will suffer. If we die, we'll die together. He knew very well how terrifying Yi Shiwen was. He didn't want to fight with Yi Shiwen. He could only think of a way to scare Yi Shiwen away. It would have been fine if they were in another place. However, Pan Tian Tian Venerable had become his only hope here. It was ironic that he had to escape from the hands of Pan Tian Emperor. But now, he had to use Pan Tian Emperor to escape from Yi Shiwen. I'm also very worried that Pan Tian Tian Venerate will chase after us. However, compared to that, it's more troublesome if you leak the secret. Yi Shiwen narrowed his eyes. He had also heard He Jimin Emperor Gui Yuan's words just now. Even Pan Tian Tian Venerable had perished because of it. So, it must be an extraordinary thing. Therefore, he couldn't let He Jimin Emperor Gui Yuan leak this matter. Otherwise, his troubles wouldn't just be this small. How about it? Aren't you going to consider it? Are you really not going to tell me what this Taoist scripture stone inscription is used for before you die? Said Yi Shiwen faintly. Impossible. Stop your wishful thinking. He Jimin Emperor Gui Yuan roared. Even if I die, I won't let you succeed. Before He Jimin Emperor Gui Yuan could finish his sentence, he saw that Yi Shiwen had already appeared in front of him. The Avicii sword in his hand released a sword light. In an instant, the space in front of He Jimin Emperor Gui Yuan shattered inch by inch, just like the surface of a mirror. Then, the sword light instantly arrived in front of his face. The terrifying sword aura even caused his face to be cut instantly, causing blood to flow out. It turned out that Yi Shiwen didn't intend to talk nonsense with him at all. He was just using words to distract him. At the moment when he was distracted, Yi Shiwen directly attacked. Damn it! By the time He Jimin Emperor Gui Yuan reacted, it was already too late. He only had time to tilt his head. However, a small part of his body below his neck was directly cut off by the Avicii sword. Blood spurted out crazily. He didn't have a strong physical body like Gung Jin Tiger Emperor. It was impossible for him to use his hands to resist the Taoist weapon like Gung Jin Tiger Emperor. Roar! He Jimin Emperor Gui Yuan roared angrily and retreated continuously. He wanted to avoid Yi Shiwen's attack range. However, Yi Shiwen was like a maggot in a tarsal bone. He directly attacked again, and a terrifying killing move erupted in an instant. Chapter 31-35. Not only did He Jimin Emperor Gui know that time was running out, but Yi Shiwen also knew that time was running out. As the Pan Tian Emperor devoured more and more emperors, his vitality was gradually recovering, and he would become more and more terrifying. By then, even he might not be able to escape. Therefore, he was taking a risk. He had to eliminate the guy who knew that he had the stone inscription before the Pan Tian Emperor found him. If he were to bring the news out, he might face all sorts of surprise attacks from the sky-shaking Turtle Emperor's faction. Not to mention, even if he managed to protect the stone inscription, the sky-shaking Turtle Emperor's faction might announce this matter to the public. Even though he was still unclear of the true origins of the stone inscription of the Tao scripture, from the attitude of the primordial tyrant emperor, it should be something incredible. At that time, unless he handed over the stone inscription of the Tao scripture, there would be no place for him in this world. It was precisely because of this that Yi Shiwen, who was almost forced into a dead end, chose to take a risk. It was precisely because of this that Yi Shiwen made a decisive move. The sword light that he casually slashed out spread throughout the entire palace space. It was extremely domineering and surged everywhere, almost collapsing the entire space. How could this be? He Jimin Emperor Gui roared. Yi Shiwen's killing intent was more intense than he had imagined. He really wanted to kill him. Unfortunately, he was not someone who would be trampled on by others. Roar! He Jimin Emperor Gui suddenly roared and let out a long cry. His entire body was like a stream of light that broke through the ancient shackles, and he directly retreated into the distance. You want to leave? Yi Shiwen sneered. The Avicii sword in his hand trembled violently. With a clang, it directly transformed into thousands of terrifying sword lights. Pucci, the sword light, slashed down, and a string of blood burst out. Hegemen Emperor Gui's body was directly cut in half. Blood spurted out, and it looked extremely terrifying and hideous. And at this moment, Hegemen Emperor Gui, who had also made a ruthless move, let out a roar. In an instant, a blazing divine light erupted from his body. On top of his head, a simple and large word appeared. The word Yuan. This Yuan character was very ancient and had an ancient feeling to it. It was unknown when he had obtained it. Most of the origin returning tyrant sovereign's great Tao landed on this Yuan character. Yuan and Shi were the same, meaning the beginning. They both possessed unimaginable great Taos and might. Now, I'll show you why I'm called Good Yuan. Origin returning tyrant emperor let out a long roar. After being forced to the peak, he launched a counterattack towards Yi Shiwen. In an instant, it seemed as if everything was collapsing. Time was flowing backwards. Everything had completely returned to its original state. Yuan was the origin of everything. It was also the root of chaos. This terrifying reverse force directly swept towards Yi Shiwen, instantly drowning him. After being forced into a corner, Hegemen Gui Yuan had finally brought out the true power of his origin. It was just that the power of return to origin was too great, and it couldn't be used frequently. I am already indestructible. This kind of move is useless against me. Time reversal. Yi Shiwen let out a long roar. A pair of golden palms stretched out from the endless power of return to origin, directly tearing this force into two. Then, everything began to flow backwards, back to the time before everything had happened. Everyone could only feel a terrifying force sweeping over. This terrifying force brought about by return to origin was swept back by the power of time. In an instant, everything had returned to the time before everything had happened. Yi Shiwen, who was standing in the middle, wasn't injured in the slightest. This was the power of the time robe. Yi Shiwen's comprehension of the power of time had advanced by leaps and bounds after he had obtained the origin of the time beast emperor ancestor. Therefore, he could also use this move in a small area. The power of time was too mysterious and unpredictable. Even an Emperor-King level expert might not be any better in the face of the power of time. How was this possible? Tyrant Emperor Gui Yuan had never expected that Yi Shiwen would be able to break his trump card so easily. Originally, even Tiger Emperor Gungjin and the others would suffer a big loss if they were caught off guard by Gui Yuan's power. At the very least, it would be enough to buy him some time to escape. However, this move was completely ineffective in front of Yi Shiwen. It didn't have any effect at all. What's impossible about this? Compared to me, you are far inferior. Not realizing this is the root cause of your death today. Yi Shiwen said as he formed the sky flipping seal in his hand. Without saying much, he directly smashed the seal down. The power of heaven and earth was borrowed, and it completely overturned the world and smashed down. Bang! A large piece of flesh and blood flew together. It was the flesh and blood of Return to Origin. He had been seriously injured by Yi Shiwen. Since the beginning of the fight with Yi Shiwen, he had been constantly injured by Yi Shiwen. His body had long been in tatters. If this were to happen outside, who would believe that the famous Return to Origin, who shocked the Stormy Sea region, would be in such a miserable state? In front of Yi Shiwen, it could be said that he had no way to fight back. Yi Shiwen's strength was far stronger than him, not to mention that Yi Shiwen had gained the upper hand. Return to Origin was terrified. He felt that his body was about to completely collapse. Yi Shiwen's attack was too terrifying. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, he would never have believed that someone could completely crush him in the same realm. Yi Shiwen, I won't let you off. Yi Shiwen didn't let him off. Return to Origin completely erupted. In an instant, The entire space was in a mess. Various spells and magical powers flew around, and the laws made up for each other. One after another, they intertwined, forming a dazzling light net that attacked Yishiwen. At this moment, there was a bit of determination in his eyes. Yishiwen's speed was also faster than his. Even if he used a secret technique, he still couldn't escape from Yishiwen's hands. Since he was going to die, he would die with Yishiwen. Normally, it wouldn't be possible. However, it was completely different here. When Pan Tian Huang found him, even someone as strong as Yishiwen would die. You want to die with me? You're thinking too much. Yishiwen sneered and immediately shouted coldly. In his palm, endless immortal light was emitted. The dark Bodhi, sacred hand, appeared in his hand, and the endless power of darkness slammed down in an instant. Boom! It struck the primordial returning Tyrant Emperor directly, almost smashing his Imperial Lord's source energy into smithereens. Needless to say, his physical body directly exploded. Yishiwen had a lot of Dao tools, so he also had a lot of attack techniques. It was impossible to defend against them. Every Dao tool had its own unique attack technique, and it was impossible to defend against it. Although it was said that impurities were not as good as purity, at Yishiwen's level, he had already walked on his own path. He wouldn't be affected by impurities. On the contrary, he could completely walk on a path that belonged to him alone. Hijimenge Yuan rushed out and reassembled his body in the distance. He looked at Yishiwen with eyes full of resentment. Being forced into a dead end like this, he had completely gone crazy. He was very angry, but he was helpless. He couldn't change this fact. This was because compared to Yishiwen, he was really far behind. Today you must die, Yishiwen shouted, and his figure directly flew out. Boom! A fierce battle was on the verge of breaking out. It erupted in an instant. It should be said that Yishiwen was completely suppressing Overlord Gue Yuan. At this moment, Overlord Gue Yuan no longer had any hope of winning. He was determined to kill Yishiwen as well. He wanted to die with Yishiwen. As a Sixth Realm Emperor, once he was determined, he still had the ability to do so. In other words, he had the ability to temporarily hold Yishiwen back. However, no matter how difficult it was to deal with, there was a limit. Boom! 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 His corporeal body had been smashed by Yishiwen again and again. His primordial spirit had also been badly damaged. At this point, even an Emperor Realm expert would be useless. An Emperor Realm expert was said to be invincible, but in fact there was a limit. No one could be truly invincible and reborn infinitely. Under normal circumstances, the outcome of the battle would have been decided long ago. However, both sides wanted to kill each other. Yishiwen wanted Return to Origin to die, and Return to Origin to drag Yishiwen down with him. Both sides were determined, and this was why the battle had been delayed until now. For battle at the Emperor level, it was actually short enough. Finally, the outcome of the battle was determined. Yishiwen had once again destroyed the physical body of Hegemon Gue Yuan. This time, Hegemon Gue Yuan didn't have the opportunity to reconstruct his physical body. Or rather, it could be said that Hegemon Gue Yuan was restricted by Yishiwen. Yishiwen had almost instantaneously materialized the hand of heaven and grabbed Hegemon Gue Yuan's soul from within. The primordial spirit of an emperor was integrated with his physical body. Therefore, it was extremely difficult to kill him. As long as a single cell escaped, he would be able to reconstruct his physical body. Only under such circumstances, and only an emperor would be able to extract his primordial spirit from his physical body. Both of them were emperor. Although their Tao was different, many of their foundations were the same. The ones who understood them the most were themselves. How could Return to Origin's primordial spirit, which was already in tatters, withstand such an attack from Yishiwen? In fact, it was only left with an obsession that was determined to stay. The obsession of an ordinary person was useless, but the obsession of an emperor could turn into a substantial existence and a substantial attack. However, in front of Yishiwen, it was still not enough. Although his primordial spirit was tough, the Nanmingli fire rose from Yishiwen's hand. Return to Origin's primordial spirit screamed, and was burned into ashes. His physical body also automatically reconstructed and was then kept into Yi Shiwen's inner world. Just as Yi Shiwen was about to leave, a terrifying aura covered the entire world. A man and a horse appeared in this space. Chapter 31-36. It was just one man and one horse, yet he was able to seize the essence of heaven and earth. It was as if he was the only existence in the world. It was just one man and one horse, but it was like a terrifying army of thousands of men and horses were marching side by side. Paragon Pan Tian Tian. He hadn't expected Pan Tian Tian Venerable to arrive so quickly. He had already eradicated Primordial Emperor Gui Yuan as soon as possible. However, Primordial Emperor Gui Yuan had wanted to drag him down with him in the end. This had delayed the battle to this moment. In the end, Pan Tian Tian managed to catch up, let alone Pan Tian Tian. Even the primal chaos heaven-swallowing beast beneath him was difficult for Yi Shiwen to deal with. On the contrary, Pan Tian 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 hadn't been too strong in the beginning. What was truly difficult for everyone to deal with was Pan Tian Tian Tian's physical body. His celestial body was more terrifying than an emperor's body. Even if everyone joined forces, they might not be able to injure him. It was almost impossible for someone who had yet to become an emperor to injure a sovereign emperor. Yi Shiwen was the only person who could kill an emperor with the body of a quasi-emperor. Even so, he had to rely on the power of a Dao tool. Moreover, his opponent had an incomplete body. Yi Shiwen would have dared to fight if he had a Celestial Master-level Celestial tool in his possession. However, it was obviously not the right time to fight now. It was unknown how many sovereigns Pan Tian Tian had devoured at this moment. His aura was circulating like a dazzling, immortal light. When Yi Shiwen opened his double pupils, he could even see tens of millions of divine law chains flowing into his body. He hadn't obtained the Tao or borrowed the power of the Tao. Instead, he had already fused with the Tao. This is the mystery of the Empyrean. Even at this time, Yi Shiwen's mind was still pondering about the mysteries of breaking through to the heavenly master level. In truth, there were a lot of emperor monarchs in the Fortune Divine dynasty, and many of them came from different worlds, but the number of heavenly venerables was extremely low. Some Empyrean emperors had entered the ninth realm, but were unable to break through to the heavenly venerate realm. No one could explain what the true heavenly venerate realm was. It was like a feeling, but also like a great Tao that they had yet to grasp. This was also the fundamental reason why countless people flocked to the treasures of the Pan Tian Tian Venerate. Pan Tian Venerate was originally a royal-level life form. Later on, he had severed his great Tao. Not only had he become a martial emperor, but he had also broken through to the heavenly venerate realm and ruled over the Tempest Sea region. This simply made countless sovereign lords feel ashamed to death. There must be some kind of secret hidden within, and this was the main reason why everyone came looking for it. As for the so-called Heavenly Master Bottleneck, Yi Shiwen didn't think that it was impossible to break through. Just like in the Myriad Worlds, everyone said that the Emperor Realm was simply unattainable. It was impossible for anyone to become an emperor in this world. However, Yi Shiwen eventually became an emperor. Moreover, he broke through the shackles and became an emperor. In the end, not only did Yi Shiwen become an emperor, but he also became the strongest in the present age. He pacified the chaos of the heavenly race and other places, and became a great emperor of the human race that was on par with Emperor Qin. Turning the impossible into the possible had already become his daily instinct. He wouldn't have been able to reach his current level if he didn't do it, even if he had the help of the mysterious space. Thus, in his opinion, breaking through to the Empyrean realm was just lacking a suitable method. Or perhaps there was some method that others didn't know about, so he didn't feel that it was terrifying. Although he hadn't even entered the seventh realm, it didn't hinder his ambition. In the distance, Pan Tian Tian and the chaotic heaven-swallowing beast, one man and one horse, had already arrived in front of Yi Shiwen almost instantly. Countless divine law chains danced in the air, and all kinds of terrifying auras surged. Tion's vitality was many times stronger than before. It was as if he had received a terrifying boost. This kind of unparalleled divine power made people tremble. Tion arrived in front of Yishiwen. He grabbed out with his big hand, tearing the heaven and earth apart, and grabbed Yishiwen's neck. He wanted to capture Yishiwen like he had captured the eternal divine emperor. Bang! Wherever Tion's big hand passed, Yishiwen's body suddenly exploded, turning into a mass of light rain that spread in all directions. Incarnation. Tion opened his mouth and said in an extremely hoarse voice. There was a look of being fooled in his eyes. Even he had been fooled. He didn't need to open his heavenly eye at all. He was already at the Tao integration realm, so he could naturally distinguish between truth and falsehood. But now, they were still deceived by Yishiwen. One could imagine how angry they were in their hearts. For existences like them, even a little bit of offense was worthy of death. At this time, at the edge of the palace space, Yishiwen's figure appeared. He couldn't help but heave a sigh of relief. Fortunately, he had evolved his incarnation in time. Otherwise, he would have been the one caught at this time. He had never faced the Tion Venerate before. Now that he was facing him for the first time, he felt a pressure that seeped into his heart. He felt as if his bones were about to break. For an Emperor Lord, this was almost impossible, but it still happened. On the other side, after realizing that he had been deceived, Tion Venerable drove the chaotic heaven, swallowing beast beneath him, and traversed more than half of the palace space in an instant. Almost instantly, he saw Yishiwen's figure again. What a fast speed! Yishiwen couldn't help but be slightly shocked. The Tion Venerable's speed was indeed fast to the extreme. The demon wings on his back suddenly opened, and he frantically fled out of the hall. Yishiwen's speed was also fast to the extreme. With just a dragon rise and phoenix fall, he had already flown out of the palace space. But behind him, Tion Venerable rushed out almost at the same time. His speed was not far behind him, and he was even a little faster than before. He was closely chasing after him. While Yishiwen was shocked by Tion Emperor's speed, Tion Venerable also seemed to be slightly surprised by Yishiwen's speed. His skill was far superior to Yishiwen's, but there was no way for him to directly catch up. This was a situation that he had never encountered when he was chasing after other Emperor Lords. Even he was a little interested in Yishiwen's movement technique. It should be known that the Demon Wings was already one of the top movement techniques in the world. Later on, Yishiwen developed the Space Wings and the Time Wings on this foundation, which pushed this movement technique to a whole new level. Especially after Yishiwen devoured the origin of the Time Beast Emperor ancestor, his understanding of the law of time had reached a higher level. This was reflected in his Time Wings, which was faster. Time sped up, so his speed naturally became faster. Even Tion Venerable couldn't catch up with him in an instant. Among the Emperor Lords, he was also at the top. One was chasing, and the other was fleeing. Both were fast to the extreme. In an instant, they had already flown out of many palace spaces. Yishiwen only cared about escaping. He also wanted to go back and fight, but it was obviously not suitable for that at this moment. However, Tion Emperor behind him was gradually approaching. In this palace space, with the recovery of Tion Emperor, the Pantheon Palace also slowly regained control, and the law of space was greatly restricted. As a result, Yishiwen could only fly directly and couldn't tear the space directly. Otherwise, Yishiwen's speed would be even faster with the use of the law of time and the law of space. However, Tion Venerable's speed was getting faster and faster, and he was almost behind Yishiwen. I'm going to get out soon. Yishiwen gritted his teeth, burned his origin, and sped up. His figure was like a ray of light, and he directly escaped. The palace gate was just in front of him. Outside the Pantheon Palace, there was no law suppression, so Yishiwen's speed could be a little faster. Whoosh! Yishiwen appeared at the palace gate in an instant. At the same time, Several Emperor Lords and Emperor-level creatures also appeared at the palace gate at the same time. They were happy that they were finally going to escape. When they saw this scene, their souls almost left their bodies. Pantheon Venerable actually directly chased after them. However, he immediately chased after Yishiwen. A big hand formed by the law entangled and slapped down towards Yishiwen, who was about to escape. Bang! There was a loud collision sound, and Time Robe directly appeared on Yishiwen's body to resist the big hand of the law. Pooh! Yishiwen spurted out a mouthful of blood, and his entire body was instantly blasted out of the Pan-Heavenly Palace. However, he didn't dare to stay any longer. The broken demon wings on his back condensed once again. Then, he directly tore open the space and flew into the distance. Roar! When Pantheon Venerate saw his prey escape, he immediately flew into a rage. He roared and charged at a few sovereign emperors who could not escape in time. These imperial lords were only at the second or third realm. The more powerful imperial lords had already fled a long time ago. How could they be a match for Pantheon Tianzuan? They were devoured alive by Pantheon Tianzuan and the chaos heaven-swallowing beast on the spot. Even their imperial lord source energy was devoured cleanly. However, Sovereign Pantheon was still unwilling to give up. He raised his head to the sky and roared. After a long time, he finally stopped. At the entrance of the Pantheon Palace, countless divine chains of laws condensed, as though warning Sovereign Pantheon not to cross the line. After suppressing me for so many years, you still want to suppress me now? Pantheon Tianzuan spoke slowly. His hoarse voice revealed a monstrous resentment. Now that I have broken free from the shackles, my tribulation is over. Who can suppress me again? As soon as Pantheon Tianzuan's voice fell, the Pan-Heavenly Palace began to shake violently. Countless divine lights shot out in all directions, turning into terrifying attacks that shot out in all directions. For a moment, the entire Pan-Heavenly Palace fell into a violent turmoil. Various laws and rules were breaking apart. The Pan-Heavenly Palace was resisting a mighty force. Both sides clashed directly with the laws, and all existences in the entire space were affected. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.